The bully approached, asking if he had the guts, but Jiangsu punched him repeatedly in the face. He knocked the bully down, crying while everyone was surprised, because this guy in the police uniform is actually the world's greatest assassin, who was reborn to take revenge on the mafia. But before that happens, a woman alerts some police officers that there's a woman in an alley who looks like she's in trouble. The officers reply that they'll go check it out. When the woman walks away, one of them sighs. He grumbles that they should just go home, clearly unhappy about it. His partner points out the people there and says they should help. The officer asks why they should bother. He says there are a lot of thugs around here, so there's nothing the two of them can do. Besides, even if that's not the case, they'll probably just cause more trouble. It's not the first time this has happened, and it's getting annoying. Just then, someone from outside yells for them to let the girl go. The officers turn, surprised to see their colleague in the alley. The aggressor asks what this guy wants. The protagonist simply replies that they should let her go. The aggressor laughs as he approaches. He asks what would happen if he didn't want to, blowing smoke in the young man's face. The protagonist takes the man down with a swift blow to the jaw. Even the aggressor's cigarette falls to the ground. He collapses, complaining about the pain as everyone stares in shock. The protagonist replies that if he won't let her go, he'll make him. The aggressor gets up, calling for the guy, and his subordinates move in for a fight. However, the protagonist just knocks the aggressor down again with a single blow, sending him flying. Those officers in the car are astonished. The aggressor complains from the ground, spewing harsh words. He reaches into his coat, pulling out a blade and saying he'll regret this today. The protagonist asks defiantly if he's really going to attack him. The aggressor says he's going to take him on right now, but the protagonist replies that he'd never do that to someone because he doesn't have the eyes of a person who follows through on a threat. The aggressor stammers, asking if he thinks he won't attack him. The protagonist just tells him to go ahead. He points the blade at himself, daring him to continue. But he warns that if he doesn't do it right, he'll be the one who loses, making the aggressor back away in fear. He drops the blade on the ground. He asks who he is as he retreats. The protagonist asks what he thinks. He is the one who stops people like him, squeezing his shoulder. Then he shows his police cap while reprimanding him again. 1 week before all this, at the port of Incheon, a man opens a cargo crate, coming face to face with several people. He says everyone is already there, introducing himself as the legendary agent Bai Kwang. His colleague Dan Puong asks why he's late while inspecting his equipment. He wants to know if he's looking down on them just because it's their last meeting. The protagonist says he wasn't that late, but he wants to know what the mission is, as all his colleagues stare him down. Then one of them steps forward with a chain, saying Bodhisattva told them to take care of him. A man attacks him with a chain, but Bai Kwang defends himself and neutralizes him with an elbow strike. That opponent falls to the ground, and the protagonist swings the chain. He asks what they're doing. Dan Puong replies that it's just their job, and the protagonist repeats the word. His colleague says it's the farewell ceremony for the legendary agent Bai Kwang. One of the opponents advances with a blade, but the protagonist immobilizes him with the chain. He lands a precise blow and faces another man with a heavy weapon. The man tries to hit the protagonist's shoulder, but he just gives his opponent a cold stare. The protagonist takes him down with a kick. Then he turns to another man with a weapon and dodges his attack. He uses the chain to immobilize and defeat him. Dan Puong watches this coldly as Bai Kwang grabs the man's shirt. He asks if they set this all up just to try and eliminate him. The blonde man pulls something from his coat and says this is a problem. He'd want to use long-range weapons, then pulls out a gun. He then replies that it's an order from Bodhisattva, and if he's not in good shape anymore, he should just accept it and give up, since he knows cleaning a gun is a hassle. Bai Kwang asks if these are really Bodhisattva's orders. This was definitely his last mission, and he was told he'd be free once it was over, so he wants to know why. Dan Puong replies that he can find out later and says goodbye as he aims the gun. The protagonist lunges at him, enraged, and the confrontation ends quickly. Incense burns in a temple where Bodhisattva is praying. He looks at a picture, and then his phone rings. He asks if they're finished, and Bai Kwang replies that yes, it's done. Bodhisattva pulls the phone away from his ear. Meanwhile, the protagonist, having defeated Dan Puong, scolds him. Bodhisattva asks if this is the legendary agent. He says he was preparing the 49th day ceremony and wants to know how he guessed it was his own memorial. Bai Kwang asks if he's at the temple. His boss asks where else a monk would be but his home, but he wants to know if Bai Kwang really thinks he can get to him with several agents in front of the temple. The protagonist just tells him to leave the door open. He says he's almost there, standing in front of the place with a gun in his hand. Then he drops his phone, saying that if they don't clear a path, he'll make one himself. They need to talk about this face to face. An agent approaches, saying that Bodhisattva is preparing a ceremony right now, but the protagonist confronts him. He says that he recruited young people to turn them into agents and profited from the conflicts of others. The agent falls silent upon hearing this. Then he grips his weapon tightly and moves it to his shoulder. The protagonist moves faster and neutralizes him with a precise blow. He tells him to get out of his way, thinking that since childhood he was raised to be a tool. That man had taken everything from him. His body, his life, and now even his family. The protagonist turns to another agent and shouts, thinking that now he even wanted to take away his right to live on, as someone points a gun at him. Bai Kwang says he promised that he would give him his life back. As soon as he finished the last mission, he screams that he had promised. Bodhisattva confirms this and says that's why he'll now let him have a normal life, because everyone's fate is the same one day. That is human life. He then prepares to fire. He asks him to have mercy, and Bai Kwang just thinks that he'll find a way to get revenge. Even if it took a long time, he would do it. Suddenly, his eyes snap open to people telling him to wake up. He's facing several police officers. A woman asks what's going on, and her colleague replies that he might have memory loss. The girl tells Kim Kyung-soo to wake up, and the protagonist asks who that is. She replies that it's him. Then her colleague shouts that here is his ID and a mirror. He was at the Ilsan police station. The protagonist repeats the name Police Officer Kim Kyung-soo. The legendary agent Bai Kwang. He holds the mirror, asking what this is. He had been defeated and woke up as a police officer. After being betrayed by the organization, he should be busy planning his comeback. But here he was, getting chewed out. A police officer scolds Kim Kyung-soo. The protagonist wonders how he got into this situation while his colleague keeps her head down. When he woke up, Bai Kwang looked in the mirror, saying that this guy had tried to give up on everything. The girl confirms it and asks how he could do that to himself. Her colleague says he was lucky to be found in time and that he was unconscious for a week. Then the woman tells the young man to listen up, because writing the names of those superiors in his suicide note would never solve all his problems. Kyung-soo asks what she's talking about, and she replies that he wrote it. The names of his superiors who bullied him were in his note, where he said he questioned their methods. Outside, Hwang Chilman asks why this year's rookies are so complicated. He then says the protagonist's parents died after committing a crime. He asks why he's trying to follow in their footsteps, and Youngchin remarks that the son of a criminal became a cop. If he wants to get into trouble, he should do it without drawing attention. He shouldn't have written their names in his suicide note. He then raises his hand to strike him. A loud sound is heard, and Chilman is stunned. The protagonist grabs his arm, and the superior asks if he's lost his mind. He demands to know how he dares to stop him. Then he calls out to Jo Gyung-hee, and the girl responds with a start. Chilman asks if this isn't an act of rebellion, and she replies that she can't see from her position. Youngchin crouches down and says he'll help her up himself, grabbing her aggressively as Kyung-soo scolds them. The brother turns towards him. Kyung-soo continues, saying that this place is a total mess too. Chilman asks what he said, but the protagonist applies force to his arm. The man starts to squirm, and Youngchin asks what's happening. Chilman tells him to get his hands off, but the protagonist takes him down with a swift strike. He falls to the floor, and his brother asks, wide-eyed, what that was. The protagonist prepares for his next move, incapacitating the police superior with a decisive blow. The man drops to the ground, neutralized. His colleagues are stunned, and Jeong-hee yells that he's rebelling against his superiors. In another room, Superintendent Choi Jina tells the protagonist to leave. He asks who's ever heard of cops fighting each other, especially confronting superiors, and if he thought he couldn't be easily fired just for being a cop. But he'll make sure he never wears that uniform again and tells him to get out of his office now. As dusk settles elsewhere, the protagonist takes off his hat, thinking about the situation, wondering how the cops could possibly be any worse. He remembers what happened at the station and the girl calling out for Kim Kyung-soo. She asked if he had lost his mind, and the protagonist replied that it was self-defense. Another colleague asks if he forgot that the father of those two was a deputy commissioner. Besides, he had one of the 5-star police classification marks, so he should just go home safely as they'd miss him. Back on the bench, the protagonist remarks that this is why they can't stop people like him, and that he was just wasting his time inside that police station. Their father has that medal, which is equivalent to a general's star in the army. He thought he should have at least been reborn as a high-ranking officer, but he was still exiled from the organization. Meanwhile, a little boy asks what a policeman is. Kim Kyung-soo looks at his hat, saying that even so, he remembers when he was a little boy on the ground and the monk reached out his hand to him, asking if he'd like to come along, and the little boy accepted, afraid. Until over time, he had become Bai Kwang, a legendary enforcer for the organization. The monk calls him, and the protagonist finds himself facing a gun, where he asks Buddha for mercy, and a shot is heard. Back at home, the protagonist reflects on his difficult situation. He repeats the name Kim Kyung-soo and looks at the Introduction to Police Science book on his desk. He had been abandoned by his parents and by the organization, and had also lost his life. But at least they had one thing in common, wondering if he should leave now. In the Gyeonggi-do region, inside the Seobu Police Department, a man with 2 Taeguk medals, Superintendent General Hong Jun, looks at his tablet. The Hwaguksa Temple investigation case had been dismissed, until a voice behind him says it's been a long time, asking if he's been well. Hong Jun turns around, asking what that is, but the protagonist stops him with a pen at the ready, suggesting they talk for a bit. Hong Jun asks who he is, and the protagonist replies that he's Bai Kwang. The man is surprised and asks what this is all about. With the situation more settled, Hong Jun says this is absurd. He is Bai Kwang, who lost his life and woke up as a cop, and it would be impossible to believe that. The protagonist replies that he wasn't asking him to believe him, because he was threatening him, and then Hong Jun sighs. Kyung-soo stands up, calling for Mr. Hong, because he's going to help with the Hwaguksa investigation, getting his attention. The protagonist stares at him coldly, and Hong Jun asks who exactly he is. Kyung-soo answers that he was Bai Kwang. Under the table, Hong grabs a radio, commenting that this isn't the place to talk about Hwaguksa, but the radio gives away his plan and makes a noise. The protagonist calls Mr. Hong and says he'll repeat himself one more time, because he wasn't asking for a favor. In the hallway, all the officers had been taken down, and the protagonist says he was threatening him. Hong is incredulous and repeats the question, wanting to know who he was. The protagonist again says he was Bai Kwang and that 3 years ago, the two of them had made a promise. When Superintendent Hong was injured on the ground, the protagonist calls his name and introduces himself. Hong Jun asks if he's from Hwaguksa, and the protagonist responds by asking if he's the person behind the Buddha who's causing so much trouble. He's the first one to get this close to him, and Buddha asked him to deliver a message. Saying he has no interest in people like him and pointing a blade at Hong Jun, he asks the protagonist for mercy. Bai Kwang questions if he wants mercy, calling Mr. Hong while taking off his mask, saying they're going to make a deal. He will let the superintendent live, and in return, he will promise to put that guy in jail within 3 years and will make up something to report him. Hong Jun asks why, if he was in the same organization as Buddha, and Bai Kwang wants to know if he likes monks, because he had a great aversion to them. Back in the present, Kyung-soo says that was their promise, but he didn't keep it. Then, he studies Hong's face for a moment, saying he had 2 Taeguks and got promoted a lot in these 3 years, so besides breaking his promise, he had been sucking up to his supervisors. In that case, it left him no choice, as he'd have to stop him permanently, scaring Hong. He shouts that he didn't break his promise on purpose, that he had no choice, asking if he thinks he got this far just by pleasing his superiors and that it's easier to get his hands on confidential information in this position position. And with all the information he's collected, in the past, after a presentation, his superiors ask about the organized group of enforcers, because he was saying that the supposed head of the organization is monk Yua, known as Buddha. Hong Jun confirms, showing his face on the screen. The superiors laugh, saying Superintendent General Hong must be reading too many comic books, since Huagoksa Temple is a national cultural heritage site. Jun says the results of his squad's investigation show this clearly until he's interrupted. A man with 5 taiguks on his shoulder says that if he's not careful, he might have to face divine retribution, which startles Hong. He continues that they should keep religion to themselves and mind their own business. Kyung-soo summarizes that he was stopped by someone above him, and Hong confirms it, handing him an envelope and telling him to see for himself, as this is what he and his squad managed to gather with great effort. The protagonist reads the text, flipping through it quickly. Then he comments that he understands now, but he was stopped because his investigation was too weak. Even so, some of these things were right, and he would let him live for now. But he quickly asks why he looked so relieved, because he had said, for now, making Mr. Hong apprehensive. Kyung-soo continues that from now on, Hong is going to help him avoid being permanently stopped. He gives a salute and says he hopes to get along with him from now on. Then he calls him Superior Hong, leaving him shocked. Birds chirp with the dawn at the Ilsan police station. Jaeong-gi and her colleague are working at the computer when the door flies open with a loud bang. They ask what that was, and Kyung-soo greets them with a good morning. The girl approaches, asking if he wasn't fired. Choi-jina angrily opens his office door, asking what all the commotion is about. He's surprised to see the protagonist's face and calls him by his name. He approaches, saying he told him not to show his face there again and that his superiors were on medical leave, so he should hurry up and disappear. Until a figure approaches from behind Kyung-soo, Choi-jina is stunned and speechless when he finds out who it is, calling out to his superior, the Superintendent General. The other officers salute him, and Choi-jina asks what brings him here. Hong Jun replies that he just stopped by to see what his Kyung-soo's workplace was like, but he wants to know what was happening here, and Choi-jina questions the relationship between the two. The Superintendent General answers that Officer Kim Kyung-soo is his savior, so they should take good care of him. The protagonist moves closer to Hong Jun. Later outside, he comments that life is easy when you're a high-ranking official, and Hong Jun asks if that's all he needs for now. The protagonist replies that there's one more thing, as he has a favor to ask. As night falls at Huagoksa Temple, Buddha prays, striking spheres in front of the same painting from the beginning. He turns upon sensing a presence and asks who's there. Bai Kwang replies that he's just a poor soul holding a huge grudge who was wandering around. The monk is surprised, and the protagonist enters, saying he's called a ghost. Yuwa grabs the incense sticks and quickly moves to throw them at the man. Just as they're about to hit his mask, Bai Kwang simply dodges the incense. He remarks that a monk shouldn't dare to damage temples that enshrine Buddha and removes the incense from the wall. The monk asks who he is to wear such a mask, and the protagonist repeats that he's just a ghost. Then Yuwa snaps his fingers, making his subordinates appear. He continues that he should then help him move on and reach the light. The men advance towards him as the monk continues to concentrate. Bai Kwang moves swiftly against an opponent and neutralizes him. The man drops his weapon, which quickly falls into the protagonist's hands. Other opponents advance on him. A man with an axe tries to attack him, but Bai Kwang is faster. He manages to neutralize him and then moves on to stop the others. The opponent falls to the ground, taken down. His adversaries are surprised by this action. The monk is left speechless as the protagonist stares at him seriously. Then he likens that man to Bai Kwang. Buddha yells that's enough fighting. The protagonist analyzes the situation for a moment and thinks it's just as he expected. Because of the interference signals created by the orchid, the camera isn't working. Bai Kwang says the situation is complicated, as there are now more souls who need his help to reach the light. He should start right away, otherwise they will become ghosts just like him. Buddha pushes all his men away and orders them to retreat. He doesn't know who sent him there, but it seems he's full of ill intentions and that mask. Then he orders the young man to come to him, asking to let him take a look at his face. Bai Kwang replies that it's fine and that he only came here to say hi. He says he'll find out who he is in time and should wait patiently for it, thinking that he still needs to train this body as Buddha advances towards him. His hand gets closer to the mask. Suddenly, a cloud of smoke explodes. The men comment that it was a smoke bomb and ask if their master is alright. Buddha confirms while holding the mask in his hand, looking at the door, staring at the man who fled. His hand clutched the mask tightly and then shattered it. Buddha turns to the incense and analyzes his table, saying that he was a ghost in that case. The next day in a park, Hong seemed to have slept poorly. Kyung-soo comments that he aged 10 years in one night, and his friend replies that it's his fault, saying he had a lot of work. From cleaning up the mess of his visit to the police department to getting the smoke bomb he asked for. He was working overtime to cover for all of it, and Kyung-soo says he wouldn't have to if he had just arrested the monk sooner. Hong Jun replies that he first needs to collect evidence, then work with the prosecutors, and the protagonist asks why it's so complicated to arrest those responsible. The superintendent then says that a person who resorts to such methods would never know. The protagonist replies that he didn't do that, but only acted against those who posed a threat, and he is living proof of that. Hong Jun tells Mr. Bai Kwang to pay attention. No one in the world has the right to take justice into their own hands, even if the person deserves it. Everyone is judged and sentenced by the laws of the society they created. Kyung-soo asks if that man was judged and sentenced by those laws. Hong replies that even if they arrest 10 criminals, they must presume the accused is innocent until proven guilty. So they need solid proof to arrest that guy, and Kyung-soo complains that he's had enough of this, sighing sadly as he wonders if he should just create his own squad. Hong Jun yells that he's a rookie officer with zero experience in the field, so he can't even if he's strong. Because within the police force, rank means everything. Kyung-soo asks how high up he has to go to have the authority to create his own squad. Hong replies that he must have at least one of the small mugungwa. The protagonist says he should get to work then and will quickly climb the ranks to get promoted. Hong tells the young man not to go around causing trouble and to just wait patiently as he will help him, until he notices the young man has already disappeared, wondering where he went. At the Ilsan police station, Jeong-hee repeats the question about how to get promoted. She says he has to take a promotional exam, and her other colleague asks Kyung-soo to take care of the woman for him. Jeong-hee asks if his memory hadn't returned since he should know these things, and the protagonist asks when the exam is. She replies that he must have at least 1 year of experience. An agitated woman yells that the service is terrible, and the protagonist resolves the confusion while asking if there isn't a faster way to get promoted. Jeong-hee asks why he was trying to get a Mugunhwa as fast as he could, and Kyung-soo says he just wants to move up in rank. She tells him to keep dreaming, because for a rookie to get one starting from the bottom of the hierarchy, it will take at least 10 years. Kyung-soo questions if that's true even with the superintendent general supporting him, and the girl says she's jealous of him. But in reality, he can take the promotional exams. The protagonist asks if there isn't any other way. She replies that there is only one, a special promotion. If his performance score is increased by apprehending major criminals, he can get a special promotion. Rookies don't have experience in that area yet and just do as they're told and handle civil complaints. In time, they would be able to go out, but she notices the protagonist had already left, asking where he ran off to in another district. Women getting involved with businessmen, street fights. The protagonist says this was it, that he was in the perfect place, wondering why a police officer would need to be good at studying. His job is to apprehend lawbreakers and bring them to justice. So now he's going to work hard, holding his hat and saying it was to get that special promotion. They say 1 in every 3 Koreans has a criminal record. Of course, the reason might be a simple misdemeanor or offense. However, 1 in 3 is a very high number. And among the crimes committed, the one Bai Kwang is looking for now is far from insignificant. He's searching for something serious that will allow him to advance in his career. The same kind of crime he wouldn't hesitate to face in his previous life. Seeing a man with a card handing it to another woman. He says he found it. Finally, a crime on his level related to illegal items. At a nightclub, the DJ suddenly stops playing. People ask why the music stopped, and the man calls out to the crowd, asking why everyone was standing around today as he wants to see the dance floor fired up and can't stand this anymore. A woman asks for a drink, saying that if he brings it, they'll have much more fun. The man cracks a smile and asks if that's what the girls want. He says the others must be tired and would like something to liven up the night. They should get ready, as he throws goodies up into the air. So now they're going to party like there's no tomorrow. But the protagonist interrupts, saying that's impossible and stopping the party, because he would be waking up at the police station instead. The DJ asks if the man is mad because he didn't fit in and tells him to grab one of the goodies to cheer up, but the protagonist replies that he doesn't need it. Besides, those goodies are illegal items, leaving everyone shocked. People comment that they were illegal things, and the DJ asks what he was saying. He says he was talking nonsense and wants to know who he is. The protagonist takes off his jacket, asking who he was as people recognize the police uniform. The DJ asks how a cop got in here and what the bouncers were doing at the entrance, but his security guard says he's not sure. Suddenly, a bottle hits the wall near him, thrown by the protagonist. He says they can continue this little chat in a prison cell. The DJ starts running in fear and tells everyone to run with him. Opening a door, he warns his colleagues that the police are there. They need to grab everything and leave, and his assistant asks about it. Suddenly, a downed man stumbles into the room. The protagonist neutralizes the assistant and keeps moving through the area. One of the security guards tries the doorknob but has no success. The DJ asks what he's waiting for and tells him to open the door now. But the man says the door is locked, with all the guards outside already defeated. Kyung-soo arrives and gets their attention, asking if they really want to mess with him. The DJ tells him to wait and asks if he's there alone. Kyung-soo asks what the problem would be if he was. Then, the criminal wonders why he got scared of a single cop and thought he was surrounded. He then calls for his guys. Kyung-soo notices something strange as they pull red stickers from their pockets. Both security guards place the stickers on their necks. Suddenly, the two men react in discomfort and scream. Kyung-soo feigns surprise. The DJ says that now he's in trouble, but the protagonist lunges forward and takes down one of the guards. The man falls to the ground. The young man says they shouldn't make so much noise. Then the guard groans and Kyung-soo adds that the fight is coming to an end. The DJ watches his men get defeated and falls to the floor, terrified of the protagonist. He tries to call out to the officer in front of him, saying they should talk and asking if he wants anything, because he can get him whatever he desires. The protagonist asks if he's serious about that. The DJ says yes and asks if it's for valuables or money because he'll give it. But Kyung-soo cuts him off, saying it's a special promotion and he just wants this, moving his hand closer to the man's face. A phone plays a news report that last night at a club in Ilsan, all members of a gang were arrested. Concerns about controlled substances in South Korea were plaguing the population. Choi Jina congratulates the protagonist on a job well done, calling him Senior Officer Kyung-soo. The young man says he was just doing his job, but thanks him. Jina asks what kind of rookie abandons his assigned post and criticizes the way he arrested them. But the protagonist tells him to take a look at something, placing a leaf on the table. He mentions that it was hidden in a safe at the crime scene. Jina asks if he took evidence from the crime scene, and the protagonist continues, saying they were paulownia leaves. He must have understood now as it was associated with the stickers. Elsewhere, a man in a phoenix mask holds one of these stickers. A man is restrained while being forced to wear the stickers. A woman watches him from a distance, and the masked man says he was the one in charge of Ilsen. The boss asks what her subordinates are waiting for, telling them to put another sticker on him. The man begs, but the sticker is placed on his chest. He passes out and falls to the floor, motionless. The Phoenix says that brother Bai Kwang was defeated and brother Oakleaf has been punished. She doesn't want to be punished for this, so she has to deal with this cop soon. Back at the station, Kyung-soo says it was November's Phoenix Polonia, known for its involvement with the substances. In his thoughts, the protagonist reflects that the one thing he's felt since entering someone else's body is that this body is well trained. Muscular strength, endurance, agility, and flexibility are all well balanced. Even so, to stop the Hwaguksa group and all its executives, he needs more. The protagonist wiggles his fingers and lies on the floor, sighing as he rests for a moment. He remarks that this body isn't quite there yet and needs more time. Inside the station, his colleagues ask if Senior Officer Kyung-soo can spare them a minute. The protagonist just asks what it is. Outside, he summarizes that they're saying they want to be promoted too. The three of them agree with smiles. Kyung-soo asks why they're talking to him. Jae Dong-ki says it's because he has the support of the Superintendent General, but her colleague corrects her, saying it's because he was recently promoted. So they're there for him, and if he needs help, he can come to them because they'll work hard. The protagonist looks at them seriously and asks why he would need their help. Jae Dong-ki asks if he's already forgotten how nice they were to him, and the protagonist confirms, saying he has short-term amnesia. The girl says they were chosen by their superiors together and visited him in the hospital, so they were nice to him. Besides, they're colleagues, and that word surprises the protagonist. He remembers a day at a rainy temple. Someone asks if he's Bai Kwang, a person who decides who will be spared and who will be detained, and if he's kidding, because a man like that was the best among them all. The other two don't believe it. Bai Kwang remains silent for a few seconds until someone calls out to Mr. Buddha, telling him to give brother Bai Kwang special treatment. The person finds this annoying and wonders why he isn't just detained. Back in the present, he repeats the word colleagues and addresses the three, telling them to come back when they're promoted because they are not colleagues. He has 3 diamonds while they have 2. Jae Dong-ki gets angry, saying he was disrespectful and that they should settle this, while Kyung-soo jokes that she's rebelling against a superior. Suddenly, a voice asks what's going on here. The 3 turn around and come face to face with Choi Jinna, who wants to know why they're standing around. They salute him, and Jinna asks if they finished their work. Jae Dong-ki says they were just taking a break. Choi Jinna says there's nothing he can do for rookies like them, but that, of course, Kyung-soo is an exception. He's the good luck charm of their station and asks if he's feeling any pain. Therefore, he shouldn't overwork himself. Jae Dong-ki thinks that her superior has changed completely now that he's getting promoted thanks to Kyung-soo, but either way, she's curious about what those two are plotting now. Elsewhere, Young Chan complains about the protagonist. Cheol-min tells his brother to calm down because if he gets angry, his blood pressure will spike, but the older one asks how he's supposed to stay calm. The Superintendent General is covering for him, and on top of that, he got a special promotion too. His whole station revolves around him now, and he won't believe it until he sees it with his own eyes. Until a woman excuses herself to the officers, asking if she can ask a favor, as she needs help finding someone. Young Chan says he's not there to do favors and doesn't know the way either, so she should figure it out herself, but Cheol-min tells his brother to look. Both are surprised as the blonde girl walks toward them, saying her phone is dead. Young Chan says he's sorry for being rude, and Cheol-min tells him not to get too excited. The girl asks for their help again. The brothers approach and ask where she's going. She replies that she's heading to the Ilsen police station. Young Chan says that's the station where they work, and Cheol-min adds that they could go together. The girl smiles and says that's a relief because if they're from the Ilsen police station, they must know Officer Kim Kyung-soo. The brothers are silent for a few seconds, but then say he's an acquaintance and their subordinate and ask what she wants with him. The girl says he has things that belong to her and her father will be very angry if she doesn't get them back. Cheol-min comments that he thought she was his girlfriend, and Young Chan says he would have left. The blonde pulls a cookie from her bag and says that as a thank you, they should have some gukwa bread while they walk. Hong Jun in his office reads the report on November's Phoenix Polonia. According to the reports Bai Kwang had provided, she's in charge of Hwaguksa's finances and commits crimes, mainly through the use of controlled substances, each with a different stage. They are called Buddha's Tears. Something worth noting is that she is afraid of being punished, and she is the infamous one. Kyung-soo was at the station getting coffee from his colleagues when the girl walks through the door eating cookies. On the street earlier, the brothers who had eaten the same cookies had passed out. The blonde eats them as if it's nothing and stands before the officers. Kyung-soo and Hong Jun consider her an unstable person from Hwaguksa. Then the woman says, "I found you, Mr. Officer." She stares obsessively at the protagonist. Jae Dong-ki asks if she lost some kind of item. She replies that she's missing Polonia leaves, and the officer doesn't understand. The woman continues, saying they were Polonia flowers wrapped in her leaf. Jae Dong-ki asks if she has something like that and just needs to check, but the woman says no. There's no need to check if they're with her, because Kyung-soo has the items. His colleague asks what this woman is talking about, and the protagonist thinks that she hasn't changed at all. He doesn't know what's going through her head, and making calls is out of the question thanks to the Orchid's signal jammer. The security cameras too. Jae Dong-ki asks if he's ignoring her. The protagonist stares at the girl, thinking it all started back then. He wields a wooden sword as the girl charges toward him. She grips the sword tightly and tries to strike the protagonist. Bai Kwang faces the weapon and counterattacks, striking her abdomen. The girl feels the impact and drops the weapon to the ground. The protagonist points the weapon at her. Buddha comes up from behind and asks what Bai Kwang thought, if any of them could be useful. The protagonist looks down and then shakes his head. Buddha says that's what he thought and snaps his fingers. The agents begin to surround them. Buddha orders them to neutralize everyone. Bai Kwang is surprised and asks him to wait, saying that with a little training, they could become good. But Buddha says empathy is an unnecessary emotion for him. The protagonist just accepts it and looks away, feeling the children's suffering. He closes his eyes as an agent calls for Mr. Buddha. The girl puts the sword on the ground and says she can still fight, because she'll train hard and be useful to him. Buddha questions if the child really wants this. Then it will be easier if she's defeated and tries again another time. The girl pleads with Mr. Buddha and struggles as she is restrained. Bai Kwang looks away as the agents immobilize her and force her to drink a liquid. As the day went on, Buddha told them to clean everything up since it was all settled. But the girl was still conscious even after ingesting the liquid. Buddha is surprised by this, and so he takes her to a room and tells her to go through a series of tests within a month. That is, if she wanted to be useful to him. So the girl built up great resistance little by little. And when she became an adult, Buddha gave her the mask, telling her she would be the November Phoenix. She thanks Mr. Buddha and says she will be a useful child. Since then, she has become an unstable and obsessed person, asking if Kyung-soo was going to ignore her. Then she wants to know where her items were. Demanding an answer, Kyung-soo thinks that too many people are watching. So he says her items were at his house. He asks if she wants to follow him there, thinking that after luring her out, he would stop her permanently. The girl looks coldly at the protagonist. Kyung-soo asks her to come with him, and his colleague warns him he can't just leave over the table. But the Phoenix calls him a liar, because he wouldn't keep dangerous items in his own home. His colleagues are surprised to hear this. Phoenix asks if he really thought she would fall for his trick. So she takes seals out of her bag, and the protagonist watches as they are thrown. He dodges just by moving his head. His colleagues are hit in the face by the seals. They begin to feel the effects, losing consciousness shortly after. Phoenix calls out for her appa, while her subordinates apply the seals to the other people in the police station. She comments that he wouldn't let everyone be defeated, and if they aren't treated soon, they will face a serious fate. If he tells her where his items are, everything will be resolved. The protagonist charges toward the girl at an impressive speed. He manages to destroy the device she was carrying. The girl is surprised by this. The protagonist announces that the signal jammer has been destroyed, crushing it with his fingers. Phoenix gets angry about her destroyed equipment. Kyung-soo warns that he's going to call for reinforcements. No one was watching them now. These are the perfect conditions for a confrontation, and he points his baton at her. Phoenix asks what he's talking about. The protagonist replies that she'll understand once he knocks some sense into her, and that they should start soon to make sure she remembers the old days. She glares at the protagonist coldly, but then laughs, commenting that this appa is pretty tough and threatened her. On top of that, he damaged her equipment and might be having a rough day. Kyung-soo moves in to strike her with the baton, but Phoenix manages to duck. He immediately follows up with a knee strike to hit her. The girl backs away from the impact of the blows. She runs her hand over her forehead, feeling the wound. Then she calls him an annoying cop and asks if he wants to be defeated. Kyung-soo replies that she looks even worse when she's angry. Phoenix says he surprised her a little and wasn't a normal cop. The protagonist tells her to stop acting like she's calm. She tries to find out where the protagonist was from and if he had been in the special forces, but the protagonist doesn't answer her questions. She removes a seal from her chest and says she couldn't care less about his former job. Kyung-soo says that was unpleasant as the girl reacts with discomfort. Then she cracks a smile, saying that she believes he'll be on his way to defeat soon. Kyung-soo just lifts his head. The girl rushes towards him at immense speed. The protagonist hits her with the baton, asking if she thinks the seal would be enough. Phoenix falls to the ground, feeling the impact. Kyung-soo asks if she still doesn't get it, even after being restrained, because she's going to need at least 10 of those, if she wants to stand a chance against him as he unleashes dozens of blows. The girl tries to resist the attacks. Then she makes a quick move with her hand. She asks how he dares. Kyung-soo comments that she would never change, because she still seems to rely on her items and avoids training her body. But given the current situation, he'd have to thank her for that. The girl asks who he is and tells him to stop pretending he knows her. He crouches, questioning who knows about that, and wanting to know who the girl thinks he is, he knocks her down with a swing of his baton. The girl falls to the floor. Without giving her time to rest, the protagonist moves his baton over her, saying she should be able to recognize him now since she's being dominated like this. Phoenix asks what he's talking about, and the protagonist says that even with her mind clouded by everything she's used, he presses the baton against her to pin her down, saying that she'll realize who he is before she's defeated. The girl tells him to let her go as she grips the baton. Bai Kwang says her fight is over. However, the baton retracts without the protagonist's action. The girl manages to breathe and he complains, sighing. He starts to talk about the baton, but the girl interrupts him with a blow to the face before he can finish. Phoenix starts to breathe heavily. Kyung-soo comments that the quality of the equipment was pretty bad, and that they give cheap things like this to low-ranking police officers. No wonder they fight so terribly. Suddenly, the woman lunges at Kyung-soo once more. The protagonist blocks, but notices something in the gap between his arms, wondering what that different seal was on the girl's body, because he's never seen a seal like this, one that turns her eye reddish. Wondering if it was a new item until looking down, his hand showed a strange reaction. He thinks this doesn't look good, as he was affected by simple contact through clothing. But even so, she didn't seem to be any better off than him, asking who he was, and why he has the same expression as Bai Kwang, until a subordinate calls from Madam Phoenix, warning that Mr. Orchid has made contact and that police reinforcements are almost there. Kyung-soo tells them to get out of there as he'll let her go for today, since they would see each other again soon, thinking there's no way the police will go after her. Phoenix turns, removing the seal, and tells them to gather everyone. Her subordinate asks if she was okay, but the woman just wonders why that cop reminds her of Bai Kwang. Later, the patrol cars and ambulances arrive. Hong Jun asks if Kyung-soo lost them, but the protagonist throws the baton in his direction. Questioning how a baton could collapse just from pressure, Hong Jun complains that they're not bad, they just shouldn't be used that way. The protagonist shows him his hands, as he couldn't feel them. Hong Jun calls the medics immediately, and the protagonist thinks it was an unexpected turn of events, and he was lucky Phoenix got scared. He wonders if this happened simply because of contact through clothing, or if they increased the original potency. Or maybe it's a new compound, while the doctor asks what it is. Kyung-soo thinks she has become a walking hazard at this point and hoped it would be okay, but it seems things are about to get hectic. He says he has a favor to ask the superintendent general, and Hong questions what it is this time. Back at his house later, the protagonist approaches the door and opens it, but Phoenix's subordinates were in the darkness. A smoke grenade is thrown, and they comment that they've got him, as it's a compound that causes confusion and eventually unconsciousness. Miss Phoenix Phoenix said she'd put a lot in there, so the effects might be more intense, and he might suffer the consequences of the compound, but the protagonist was wearing a gas mask, thinking he'd borrowed some gear. Not the expensive kind, as he wants the good stuff, saying he already knew the men were coming. The scared girl was so frightened she didn't even show up, but whatever, because he's going to test how expensive this gear is. The protagonist points his weapon, and the men are surprised. They wonder how he got this equipment, while their colleague tells them not to be afraid, as the gun must be unloaded. But the protagonist neutralizes the first man and then continues to immobilize the other two until he empties the magazine. With both of them on the floor, he approaches. Analyzing the immobilized men, he comments that this gun is very good. The police arrive at the building and residents ask what happened, while an officer tells them to go back inside. The residents had heard loud noises, or it could have been their imagination. Hong Jun says that even though they were rubber bullets, he overdid it. He wonders if the men are breathing, but Kyung-soo says he gave them exactly what they deserved. They might wake up while being transported, so he must make sure someone removes the emergency capsules they're carrying. Hong comments that he really is Bai Kwang. Kyung-soo asks if he was in doubt until now, even after lending him the equipment. The superintendent says he can't blame him, as no one in their right mind would believe in reincarnation. But after seeing the substance incident involving Phoenix, and this one now, he's about 99% sure that he's Bai Kwang. The protagonist asks why not 100%. Hong Jun stands up and says the 1% was because if he were Bai Kwang, it makes no sense that he didn't go after Monk Yua to stop him. Kyung-soo replies that he was the one who said solid evidence is important, and now he's saying this because a police officer can't do such a thing. Hong Jun says that's the correct thinking from a police officer's perspective, but not from Bai Kwang's. The protagonist responds that Yua was respected and adored by every citizen in the country, and many people consider him an enlightened figure. If something happens to that man, he asks how the public would see it, and just stopping him won't solve the whole problem, as the underworld is much bigger than he can imagine. Hong Jun asks if he's saying there are other organizations besides Hwadguksa, and the protagonist replies that he doesn't care about others. What he wants now is that Monk's downfall in every way possible, to ensure no one is forced to live the way he lived. Hong Jun is silent for a few seconds but says he'll help. They must work together to put that man behind bars. Kyung-soo replies that the superintendent general has forgotten, because he's the one helping him not to be defeated by him, reminding him of the previous show of force. If he doesn't want to be defeated, he'd better listen, while Hong says he's been doing that very well. The protagonist replies that lastly, it's not that he didn't try to stop the monk, but he couldn't. After all, he was the one who taught him everything he knows. Yua confronts Phoenix, holding her firmly, and the girl flinches at his action. She begs Lord Buddha, asking for forgiveness and mercy, while the monk stares at her coldly, filled with anger. Then he shoves her to the ground, asking if using so many compounds had affected her judgment, since she had her assets taken and then broke into the police station. The girl begs for forgiveness as she cries. Buddha calls out to Phoenix, saying it looks like she needs a lesson. The girl tries to crawl away, begging Lord Buddha. She was wrong and won't make the same mistake twice. Suddenly, laughter is heard from outside the room. The two comment that she looks like she's crying like a baby, and has sunk to a new low. If she cries, she'll lose muscle mass, and if she loses the little she has, she'll just vanish from the planet. Phoenix, on the floor, calls out to the Lespediza brothers, asking why those individuals were there, and a woman questions, what do you mean, why? She opens her fan and asks if she doesn't think they came because Lord Buddha called them. Phoenix calls out to Cherry Blossom, and the brother questions if that woman came too. The girl turns to Lord Buddha, and the monk says that everyone is here now. So the case regarding the disposal of Phoenix in November would now begin, with everyone staring at each other after hearing his words. Phoenix screams for Lord Buddha's forgiveness, saying she'll make sure to recover what she lost and that he must please forgive her, but the monk replies there's no need for that. He's already recovered it, showing the rolled up leaves in a box. The girl asks how that happened. Buddha turns to his other subordinates, wanting the opinion of April's Black Lespediza, July's Lespediza, and March's Cherry Blossom. July says they should deal with her, and April continues, saying that gaining power using substances was the most perverse thing she can think of. March turns to Phoenix, saying that over the years she grew quite close to her, but she can say that the world of professionals is a cruel one. The monk tries to say that most people have already voted, while Phoenix calls out to Buddha, saying that he's so cruel, as she cries in fear, because he was determined to deal with her permanently from the start, and July comments that she's whining again. Phoenix continues, saying he brought that woman and these individuals who hold a grudge against her, and March says she's hurt. Buddha remains silent as the girl runs towards him. Phoenix notices March offering a gun to Buddha. The monk takes the gun, saying he has no need for someone who won't be of any help to him. The girl cries, and he says for the merciful Buddha to save her soul. Just as he was about to act, Phoenix bows, announcing she has created a new compound. It was 5 times more potent than the previous one. It's a compound she developed herself, so it would be hard to detect in inspections. April complains that it's substances again. Buddha questions how many kilograms were made, and Phoenix replies about 10. Then, the monk wants to know about the distribution. The girl explains that she connected all the routes between the underground areas of Korea, Japan, China, and all of Southeast Asia. So she begs for half a year, as that's all she needs to become a useful daughter to Lord Buddha. The monk replies he'll only give her 3 months, as he lost a lot because of her stunt, and she must prove her worth to him. The girl cracks a smile and agrees. At the hospital, Jaeong-hee was completely confused, speaking nonsense. Kyung-soo asks what's wrong with her, and his colleagues comment that she's going through withdrawal effects from the substance, as her body is sensitive. The girl speaks strangely, and her colleague translates that she was asking Kyung-soo to wipe her mouth. He comments that he was surprised the guy came to see how they were, and the protagonist questions this. Since they kept going on about how they came to visit when he was in the hospital, he's here now and they're even. Another colleague says he got a special promotion again, and Kyung-soo replies he hasn't heard about it yet. But if he's jealous, he should work harder, and he's leaving now. They comment that Kyung-soo has changed a lot inside deeply, wondering what they were even doing. Later, at the police station, Hong Jun comments there might be an informant within the police organization. Kyung-soo is surprised, and the officer says he wanted to test the substances he brought, so he sent them to the forensic forensic lab, but they disappeared and someone managed to get them, asking if the protagonist has any clues, but Kyung-soo says he knows nothing about the police. The evidence would be his key piece, so he'll get it back when he captures the person responsible. Therefore, he'll handle the internal part of the organization himself and should hurry up to find out about her subordinates, and Jun replies they were interrogating them. Kyung-soo questions when he will use the special team for the Hwaguksa investigation, and Hong Jun says that actually all of them were already at the cemetery and none are left. Kyung-soo is silent for a few seconds and complains that the other man lied to him, and Hong Jun says he couldn't trust him back then. The protagonist tells him not to move or he'll have to arrest him, but the superintendent asks him to wait. The protagonist asks why he doesn't just form a new team. He says he'd need at least one small mugunghwa to form his own team, and Hong Jun confirms this. He has 2 tak mugunghwa, so he has the authority to do so. But the protagonist immediately refuses, saying he prefers to work alone. Hong Jun mentions that he had talked about a team, but Kyung-soo shoots him down, saying he didn't mean it like that. The superintendent general removes his hand from the protagonist and calls him corporal. He warns him that the police force is an agency, and there are limits to what one can do alone. A team would make things easier, secure more funding, and simplify justifications. So as his superior, he was ordering Corporal Kyung-soo to assemble a team. He can't create one himself, as there are too many eyes watching and too many risk factors involved. Kyung-soo repeats an order. He says that if he had asked politely instead of ordering, he would have considered the request. Without hesitation, Hong Jun asks him to assemble his own team. Back at the hospital, his colleagues ask if he's really going to form his own team. It was strange for a corporal to form a team, and Kyung-soo replies that he was ordered to do it. Gyeonggi asks who the team members will be. The protagonist answers that it would obviously be them, because besides them, there's no one at the station with a lower rank. His colleague thanks him, saying he thought he'd become useless after his injury. Gyeonggi emotionally thanks him as well, and they both promise to work hard for him. They accepted a job thinking they would be stuck with desk duty for the rest of their lives. They wonder if this is what it means to have a colleague. The protagonist asks what they mean by that, saying they don't know their place yet. He doesn't need useful colleagues. He just needs obedient people who will follow his every command. They summarize, so we're not your colleagues. The protagonist confirms, saying they are his subordinates. People who must risk everything if he says so, and must retreat if he orders it. So if they understand, they must call him chief. Only then will he allow them on the team. According to the report Hong Jun had shown him, one of them is Hwang Hee-jun, 25 years old. He's well-trained in boxing, kickboxing, taekwondo, and other martial arts. Looking at his records, he seems like a great candidate. However, he failed the written exam 4 times and got in last place. Hee-jun asks what he means by chief, since you need at least a small mugunghwa for that, revealing his naivety. The one next to him is Lee Sung-hyun, also 25. He excels at grappling and ground-fighting martial arts like jujitsu and judo, with excellent records. But on the day of his interview, he got overly emotional. Now he says he doesn't understand what he means by chief, because it sounds intimidating. Jae-young-gi complains that he's being emotional, and Kyung-soo thinks that last but not least, there was Jo Gyung-hee, 25 years old. She has no training in any martial arts, placing last in the physical exams. The weakest officer on the force, but she finished first in the written exams and also ranked first in the interview, which means she's very smart. She says she'll do whatever the chief wants, as long as he puts her on the squad. The next day on a mountain, the 3 of them were in training gear. Kyung-soo begins to stretch. Hee-jun starts to call his friend, but quickly corrects himself to chief. Wanting to know why he called them out on a weekend, the protagonist tells them to start stretching, because they are police officers and he is a dangerous criminal. They have 5 minutes to prepare before they attack him all at once and try to subdue him. Hee-jun asks if he's sure about a 3-on-1 fight. Sung-hyun calls out to his chief and asks what happens if he gets hurt, but the protagonist just warns that they have 4 minutes left. They will start in exactly 4 minutes. The 3 of them crouch down and start whispering. Jae-young-gi comments that the guy has lost his mind. Seung-hyun complains that she didn't call him chief, and the girl says it's not like he can hear her. But from a distance, the protagonist replies that he can, and she quickly calls him chief. They go back to whispering, and Hee-jun asks what they should do since they agreed to do whatever he said. Jae-young-gi says Hee-jun will pretend to engage him directly, while Sung-hyun should take him on the ground. Sung-hyun immediately complains, calling him a chicken. Hee-jun asks if all he has to do is run straight at him. Jae-young-gi reminds him that he trained boxing, so he needs to use his footwork to confuse him. The protagonist takes off his shirt and asks if they're ready for combat. The 3 of them are stunned by his physique. Kyung-soo announces that time is up and tells them to come at him. The girl tells Hee-jun to go, as he repeats the phrase, confuse the opponent with footwork. He approaches while muttering this dozens of times, but when it's time to execute, it looks like he's dancing. The protagonist asks why he suddenly started moving like that. Jae-young-gi says he's being foolish and needs to get closer, but they're shocked to see their friend taken down with a single move. Kyung-soo calls out to them. He approaches, asking if they're messing with him. Jae-young-gi tells Lee Sung-hyun to advance, and the young man trembles slightly. He then takes off running, yelling that he can't do it. Kyung-soo appears beside him, saying he should never show his back, especially to a criminal. He then takes him down with a precise strike, calling him a fool. He leaves the man on the ground. Jae-young-gi trembles with fear as the protagonist turns toward her. She asks him to wait as he approaches. She pleads with him, asking if their chief doesn't fight women. Kyung-soo replies that he doesn't fight women, but he does fight police officers. He then neutralizes her with a swift move. The girl complains about the hit. The protagonist says they're on another level of useless, wondering how they're supposed to catch criminals like this. They are to rest for 10 minutes, and then they'll repeat this training 3 more times today. If they want to improve, they need to come at him with everything they've got. He orders them to respond, and the 3 agree with their chief. At the police station, Hong Jun asks how the team building is going. The protagonist replies that their performance is pathetic and wonders how they even became cops, but Hong asks him not to be too hard on them. Kyung-soo says they won't be going after normal criminals, but people like him. Anyway, he asks when the interrogation will be over, since after all this time, he's got nothing. Hong complains that they just stay silent. He was thinking of using a more effective interrogation method, but the protagonist says that would never work work on people who deal with the Phoenix. In any case, it was his own fault for trusting a cop, so he'll take care of it himself. Hong Jun tells him not to cross the line. The protagonist says that's just like a country that takes human rights seriously, even for criminals. Hong Jun reminds him they are still police officers. Kyung-soo asks if, as long as he doesn't physically harm them, he can do as he pleases. The superintendent agrees. The protagonist tells him to leave it to him, as he's had a great idea. With the lights dimming, the suspects rest at a table. Someone then enters through the door. One man says it's no use, he won't say a word. But Bai Kwang asks how Choi Sang-muk is doing. The huge guy who wears flowery blue clothes, the Phoenix's right-hand man. Wait, he must be the right-hand man now, because Kim Dong-cheol used to be the right-hand man. The suspects are surprised. Bai Kwang mentions there's also that woman who's always near the Phoenix. Then the other man asks who he is. The protagonist says it's been a while, and that he's Bai Kwang. Now, they're going to have a talk. The man asks what he's talking about since Hyung Bai Kwang is dead. His colleague comments that he looks just like the Hyung. Bai Kwang says it seems they already know each other, because he recognizes the scars made by a high-heeled shoe. He was confronted by the Phoenix because he was caught transporting the illegal substance. His colleague asks if that's true, and the other man replies that Mr. Bai Kwang isn't dead. Meanwhile, the protagonist explains that he was sent on a secret mission. He had to fake his own death and infiltrate the police to watch every move made by the high-ranking officials. But he heard the Phoenix lost the shipment and tried to invade the police station without success. November, Phoenix is Paulownia, wondering what she was doing now. He cut the voice recorder's signal with the Orchid's jammers, so they could talk freely, since her fate depended on their answer. If she's just idling in the hideout after making that huge mistake, according to Buddha's orders, there will be consequences for her. The two tell Mr. Bai Kwang not to worry about the Phoenix. The young lady was currently manufacturing a new compound. He thinks for a moment and cracks a smile, saying they should get into the details then. In his office, Hong Jun says it's unbelievable that a compound 5 times stronger than the last one exists. He comments that they're planning to distribute it on the streets within half a year and that he should take a look at the report, as it contains all the locations and distributors. Hong Jun asks if he has found out where the Phoenix lies, and Kyung-soo replies that not even Buddha knows. Probably only her managers know her whereabouts. The superintendent decides he'll have to bring them here to get that information, and he confirms as they need to get inside their headquarters for that. Although he doesn't think it will be easy to get any information from them, Phoenix was sitting in her base. Choi Sang-muk, the distribution manager, approaches and calls out to her, asking if 3 months isn't too short. She knows the saying that haste makes waste, and Kim Dong-cheol agrees. He heard that 2 of his men were captured by the police. It would be too risky to keep rushing things, and it would be better to ask Mr. Buddha for more time. Phoenix asks if they'll take responsibility if she gets reprimanded by him. A woman says that's a given, as she will take responsibility, introducing herself as Sang-pi. She says the name is getting to Phoenix's head and wants to know what happened while she wasn't by her side. Phoenix says that if she orders them to get it done in 3 months, they will stick to that deadline. Choi Sang-muk must connect all distribution routes and postpone the date, while Dong-cheol prepares things as quickly as possible, and she calls Miss Sang-pi aside privately, as she smells the scent of flower herbs cuddled up with Sang-pi on a bed. The woman tells Miss Phoenix not to be afraid, as she has her by her side. She will take care of everything for her as fast as she can. Elsewhere, Jiang He says the coach should go easy on them. Kyung-soo replies they've been resting for 10 minutes, so they should get up and continue. The girl asks if he isn't being too hard on them, as they heard nothing about having to train like this. Kyung-soo repeats that they agreed to do a bit of everything, and Jiang He complains that this is pure They put their team together to stop criminals, not to train so intensely with him. He asks if they really want to do this, and the 3 of them agree. So he tells them to go on their way. In a warehouse, he opens the door for the 3 of them. They come face to face with a group of men handling Phoenix's stickers. Kyung-soo comments that it seems they're in the right place, and a man asks what this is about. Jaeong-gi calls out to her friend, and Kyung-soo asks what they are waiting for. There's a group right in front of them, and they have to act fast, while the man realizes they are cops. He shoves the trio towards them. They turn around as the leader tells his subordinates to take care of them. He closes the door and tells them to have fun, and so the 3 of them complain about their current situation. Heejin wonders what they should do. He's fought one-on-one before, but this is his first time against multiple people. And Seong-hyun says he wants to go home. But Jaeyoung-hee tells the 3 of them to calm down. It's not like they're going to die here, and even though Kyung-soo is strict, he wouldn't abandon them anyway. So they have to show him they're cops too, and Kyung-soo thinks that's just what he expected. She's smart enough to realize that in this situation, they need to stay calm. The girl tells the cops to act, and he thinks her actions aren't helping at all. Heejun asks how, and the girl says he has to land the first blow. The man charges at one of the opponents, screaming as he gets hit during the confrontation. Jaeyoung-hee says he was supposed to land the first blow, not take one. Heejun says it hurt, and the girl replies, of course it did. But the young man realizes it didn't hurt that much. Compared to Kyung-soo's hits, that man's punch felt weak. Wondering if it's because he got used to training with him, he lands a blow on the opponent. Then he tells everyone to charge, and Sung-hyun comments that the opponent's punch really is weak compared to Kyung-soo's. One of the men corners Heejun with a bat. The young man notices too late, and Sung-hyun grits his teeth. He charges towards him and grabs him by the waist. Kyung-soo thinks they're pretty fired up now, and that those 2 could be useful with a bit more training. But he notices Gyeong-hee just giving moral support. The group's boss yells that they're all useless. They were being overpowered by 2 cops. He then takes off his shirt, revealing tattoos, and remarks that they're a disgrace. Heejun and Sung-han get scared of him, and he thinks it's over as they've allowed fear to enter their minds. If you let fear into your mind, the attacker lunges forward and strikes Seongyun, sending him flying. Kyung-soo completes the thought. The chance of failure increases. The man runs towards Heejun, and the protagonist thinks they have a long way to go. The leader says his subordinates were defeated by those two and that it was pathetic, but he notices the girl asking to surrender. Jaeyoung-gi was on her knees, repeating that she surrenders. She says she'll tell him everything she knows, so he shouldn't attack her. Kyung-soo thinks she's very clever, but then he notices something. She takes a device from her pocket and quickly moves towards his shoe. Then she uses the device to neutralize the man. The girl yells for him to stop. He grits his teeth and prepares to attack her, insulting her. Before he can hit the girl, Kyung-soo steps in and quickly neutralizes the attacker. Jaeyoung-gi is impressed, and Kyung-soo says that for now they've seen it, just how unprepared they were. But now they should grab the substance from the table, as someone else will take care of the arrested men. It's going to be complicated, but for now, these three are nothing but dead weight, so they should head back. Later, elsewhere, Sang-muk stands before the man who was arrested. The man calls him Sir, talking about the cops, while the manager silences him with a threatening gesture. A man tells Manager Choi there's something right there. Sang-muk notices something on the table, trembling with fear upon seeing Bai Kwang's card. In the police station, Hong Jun says that with this amount of material, they could become major distributors. So the information wasn't false and they can move forward with the plan. The protagonist asks if the ambush plans have been finalized. Hong Jun says he'll introduce one of the officers who will be part of the ambush, and that she is one of the few people he trusts there, then tells her to come in, asking him to say hello to the person who will join this operation, a member of the KNP, Superintendent Kim An-hyung. He greets her, and Hong Jun introduces Senior Officer Kim Kyung-soo. The woman approaches, saying that a mere senior officer is sitting in the Superintendent General's room as if it were his own office and must have lost his mind. He complains that his legs hurt, and Hong tries to stop her, saying it's fine and they should calm down to plan. Then she orders the senior officer to stand up as she dislikes rude people, pressuring him to get up. She repeats the order to stand, and he dares her to make him. Kim asks what this is about, and Kyung-soo says he doesn't want to get up. The superintendent says she'll give it a try while commenting that she doesn't see much point in all this complicated hierarchy. The woman asks what that guy just said, and that if that's how it is, she'll make him stand up herself. The two of them stare each other down hostilely. Hong Jun calls out to Superintendent Kim An-hyung and tells her not to start a fight with him. The woman quickly backs away, and he notices something different. She tries to close in with a leg movement, but quickly feints into a high kick. He dodges by throwing his body back. He thinks that was a capoeira move. The KMP Soul wasn't like the people at the station. They were on a different level as he dodges all of An-hyung's attacks. The woman calls him insolent. She asks how he dares to dodge all of her moves, and if that's how he wanted to fight, she would grab him and drag him out of there by force. The protagonist thinks that she switched to a grappling technique in an instant and is also quick on her feet, on another level compared to Sunghyun. He moves his fingers to strike her chin, thinking she's a valuable piece for his plan. The girl loses consciousness and falls into the protagonist's lap. Kyung-soo asks if she didn't say she was going to take him out of there and wants to know why she's lying down. She gets even more irritated and charges in for a confrontation. The protagonist comments that it's expected from a member of KNP's Soul, as she has incredible physical ability dodging all his attacks. Hong Jun eats his chocolate bar, saying it was really good. After the confrontation ends, she announces that from now on, she will explain Operation Phoenix Palonia. According to the report, on the last weekend of each month, the distribution managers gather for a meeting in the club's basement, and that would be in 2 weeks. They will seize their chance with a team led by Superintendent Kim An-hyung and the team led by Kyung-soo. The girl asks how she can trust the information. Hong Jun says he got it through interrogation, and she tells him not to joke around, as they said nothing when she interrogated them. Kyung-soo tells her not to doubt him since he was the one who got the information, and she tells the protagonist to shut up. She wants to know why he was speaking so informally. She wouldn't believe it unless she heard it from their own mouths and is going to interrogate them one more time, but Hong Jun refuses. He says that, unfortunately, another interrogation is impossible, as they were found dead. An-hyung is surprised, and the protagonist asks why the security there is so bad. Hong Jun continues, saying they must be prepared as he will see them both at the next meeting, and that they are dismissed. The girl asks how they died. The general superintendent tells the protagonist to stay a little longer. An-hyung asks what was happening in that place. As she opens the door, she warns that her specialty is shooting and that he should be prepared, as she will come after the protagonist with her gun. Kyung-soo comments that she's completely out of her mind. Hong Jun calls for the protagonist's attention. He shows an object that was found in the interrogation room where the two were found dead. Then he asks if that card means anything to him. The protagonist quickly identifies it as a crane. In the hideout, Phoenix holds Bai Kwang's card, trembling. Sang-muk comments that it was found in a warehouse where the police ambush took place, and Dong Chil asks if they should report it to Mr. Buddha, but Phoenix refuses, because it can't be and Bai Kwang was dead. Besides, Buddha would complain if she spoke nonsense. She says they must proceed with the plan. If she can't redeem herself this time, she will suffer the consequences. She wonders why the police have Bai Kwang's card, as it makes no sense, thinking that if she fails, her life will be at risk. Then she screams, having a breakdown, and the managers order them to bring Miss Sang-pi quickly. Incensed smoke rises into the air, and the woman closes Phoenix's eyes. She calls her two subordinates, who ask what their lady desires. Phoenix just tells them to proceed with the plan. Dong Chul comments that this is very risky, as the police know everything and there are other concerns, but Phoenix calls for Miss Sang-pi. She tells her to give them one too, because if they worry too much, things will go wrong. The woman says it will be as she wishes. They must come here and get one. Holding a paper of Paulownia flowers, Phoenix says it was refined and purified by Sang-pi just now, so it's fresh. The two use the substance. Dong Chil comments that all his worries were disappearing, and Sangmuk says that now everything will go as it should, so they would continue with the plan. In the training area, Kyung-soo complains that this is not good at all. Wondering if the other two ran off, Jae-young-hee comments that they were going to stop by the hospital on their way. The protagonist comments that they weren't very prepared, but that it's actually better this way. Jae-young-hee suggests they can rest since she's the only one here, but the protagonist questions this, because until the others arrive, the two of them will fight each other. This would be her special training, and the girl repeats the question. The protagonist comments that her physical condition is inadequate. The girl says she's in good shape, but the protagonist replies that she's completely unprepared. She has no muscle mass, but has stamina, and her flexibility is like a statue's, with no specific traits for fighting. They will be sent on an operation soon, and she will probably be the first to be neutralized. The girl asks what kind of operation it was. Kyung-soo thinks that at first he wondered who would let a girl like her become a police officer, but over time, he came to a plausible explanation. He knew she was smart, but she's much brighter than he expected. From what he heard, she memorized all the restaurant numbers in this area and was called human delivery. Kyung-soo warns that if she doesn't want to be defeated, the best thing is to focus on her strengths and avoid wasting time hiding her weaknesses. From now on, when she's training, she should think of a collapsible baton as a weapon. When it's folded, she should think of it as a defensive object. He's going to take extra care with her so she can learn with her body. So she must make sure to memorize this with that genius brain of hers, and the girl asks what she should memorize. The protagonist warns that she'll find out soon enough, and the girl asks him to tell her. Then she should just wait and see what happens. That day moves on, and Heejun and Sunghan are impressed. They wonder what happened to this place. The girl says it was very intense, and they want to find out what they were doing. The protagonist asks if they really want to know, because they'll find out soon, and it's better not to worry. The two ask to live the rest of their lives without finding out. Time passed, and 15 days later, the night of Operation Phoenix Polonia arrived. Heejun comments that he just lived through a very tough 15 days, and Sunghyun says he doesn't want to experience that again. Jae-young-hee asks what kind of operation this is to be working with KNP Seoul. An-hyung asks what's supposed to be in the forest and says that if they don't find anything, she'll settle the score with the protagonist. A man in front calls for the captain. He reports that they've arrived as there was a tunnel with two strange-looking guards on watch. Jae-young-hee asks what it is, while An-hyung reacts and moves forward as far as she can. She quickly moves her weapon and neutralizes one of the guards. Her other colleague tries to grab something from his pocket, but he is hit and neutralized by An-hyung's move. All the squad members are shocked by her skill. The girl communicates on a radio saying the two guards were successfully detained and that they will now begin the operation. Kyung-soo says that's some incredible skill and that they should go now. An-hyung tells them to stop as they will stay here and watch these two. The protagonist replies that she's not thinking straight. The girl adds that in the first place, KNP Seoul and some city cops working together is absurd. Jae-young-hee tries to add that they aren't like that, but she laughs, saying that a city cop is talking back to her now. She let them come along because of the general superintendent's order, but they should stay away from now on, as they'll only get in the way. Kyung-soo says they are on their own and that it's better because they won't have to try as hard. An-hyung comments that he was finally listening to her orders. So now they will go in, advancing with her squad. The protagonist analyzes the place after restraining the guards at the entrance, and after descending a long flight of stairs, An-hyung enters with her squad. They arrive at a place where loud music is playing, but the people were in a trance-like state, swaying back and forth. An-hyung wonders what that was. Dong-cheol sighs, saying that he knew it. He knew this would happen. Everything seemed completely wrong, and so he grabs a radio, announcing to everyone that this is a message for all club members. Currently inside the club, some unwanted guests have invaded, trying to ruin the party. If they could capture and bring them to him, for each one they brought, he would give a pass allowing unlimited access to special treatments for a month. From now on, Operation Phoenix Polonia had begun, with An-hyung ordering her people to raise their shields. The people in a trance advance toward the police officers. They block with their shields, but are pushed back. They wonder how they're so strong, and Dong-cheol comments that they can't just use excessive force or they'll be in trouble. An-hyung orders the containment platoon to put on their masks. She throws a tear gas grenade. The girl commands her squad to push them back now, but a soldier calls out to the captain. An-hyung is surprised because the tear gas had no effect on them. Dong-cheol says it was useless, as they were feeling euphoria that overcame the pain. He orders them to gather the special items and take them to Miss Sang-pi through the back door. But someone suddenly enters the room and An-hyung turns around. Kyung-soo was running in and she tells him to get back to his post. The protagonist leaps, using her shoulder as a launchpad to go toward Dong-cheol. He advances with a blade, thinking of the metal bar. A swift strike is aimed at Dong-cheol. He's surprised but manages to block it with his radio. The protagonist says he underestimated him. Unlike the boss, the subordinates must have received martial arts training. Down below, the people protest as the police push them back forcefully. Dong-cheol comments that they really think they can advance just by using force, and the protagonist calls out to him. The manager turns, but is quickly startled. The protagonist moves at high speed and lands several blows to his chest. An-hyung is shocked by his speed. Dong-cheol stumbles back in pain, but the protagonist grabs him by the neck. He presses him against the wall, asking why he looked away and if it was because he seemed weak to him. It wasn't a serious wound, so he shouldn't worry. They begged him not to take anyone's life if he could help it. Then, he quickly moves his blade, pinning Dong-cheol's hands to the wall. Dong-cheol feels the impact of the blow. The protagonist says he won't take his life, and that he should just stay put right there on the wall. Dong-cheol asks who he is. Kyung-soo walks away, saying he didn't know either. An-hyung pushes away one of the people in a trance and celebrates their success. She warns that they're coming up the stairs, but then she gets scared. Kyung-soo's blade was still in the wall, and Dong-cheol was immobilized with adhesive tape holding his hands. Even though the tape held him, he didn't look well, and An-hyung asks if he tried to break free. Dong-cheol questions who that guy was and if he was part of KNP Seoul. The girl takes off her mask, saying she wants the answer to that too, as Kyung-soo defeats defeats everyone in his path. He tells Phoenix to come out and his subordinates were all on the floor. An Hyang suggests Dong Cheol come down and surrender to get treatment, but he says there are too many cops there. He hasn't seen so many since he was in the special forces. An Hyang asks what he means. The man says it was nice to see them, his rookies. He was Kim Dong Cheol from class 29X and wants to know what class they're from, aiming a device at them. The girl tells everyone in her group to get ready. Outside, the three of them wait. Heejun asks if Kyung-soo will be okay since he heard sounds of a fight, and Sung-hyun adds that he asked them to wait. Jaeong-gi asks why he brought them here if he was just going to leave them behind and only use them to fill a spot. And they want to know why they went through that secret training. They went through so many challenges until they noticed Sang-muk behind them. He asks what those police officers were doing there. The three of them quickly back away when they hear his voice. Jaeong-gi swiftly draws her taser. She fires at Sang-muk, but the man just puts his hand up to stop it. Then, he pulls the weapon and breaks it easily. The girl is impressed, and he says that it doesn't even tickle. But it's nothing compared to what Miss Phoenix is capable of. Firearms were a sensitive topic in Korea as they have strict regulations regarding their use. The police are no exception, and a case where an officer fires live ammunition is rarely seen. That's why police officers learn to use non-lethal weapons like tasers or rubber bullets. Dong Cheol tells them to shoot all they want while holding a blue candy, because they can certainly cause a lot of damage using rubber bullets. The officer asks what that table is made of, and An Hyang says it won't work, so they must switch to live rounds. She says she is Kim An Hyang from class 30X, and the next round will be live ammunition, so he should stop resisting and surrender to treat his injuries, but Dong Cheol says he'd rather not be captured. He would end up spending the rest of his days in a cell and wouldn't be able to use his stimulants anymore. An Hyang asks if he was choosing this over his life, and Dong Cheol says that when he was on active duty, his life changed completely after finding certain substances on a mission. He scoured the area looking for better quality items, using his position to his advantage, but over time, his body started to become immune, and soon, none of the substances satisfied him. But she, seeing Phoenix, asks if he is Kim Dong Cheol, because she heard that his body had become tolerant to stimulants. So she hands him the candy, saying it was made with the purest ingredients they have, and she wants to know if he'd like to try it. Dong Cheol tastes the candy and feels something incredible. He imagines himself in a state of euphoria, because it had been electrifying this time. Phoenix asks if it was good and says that if he works for her, she can give him things better than this. Dong Cheol says he'll do anything and everything. The girl tells him to promise not to consume more than one a day because he'll get sick if he does. The man complains that he's going to be captured anyway and doesn't need to keep that promise anymore. He was badly injured and wants to know who that guy is because it's sad. Since it bothers him to know he won't be able to have any more of these candies, he puts them all in his mouth. An Hyang announces that the ammunition is ready to fire and she will start the countdown until she sees the barrel of Dong Cheol's device sticking out from behind the table. He fires and the projectile ricochets off the wall. It heads toward the girl, who manages to dodge by ducking her head. She wonders if the projectiles are ricocheting. Dong Cheol gets up and tells his juniors not to just stand there. They need to make their seniors' farewell completely extravagant, so he fires again. Kyung-soo dodges another shot somewhere else. The other opponents continue to fire at him, but Kyung-soo grabs one of their wrists and strikes it to make him drop the weapon. Pulling out his own gun, he fires to neutralize the man. He continues to do the same to each of his enemies, pointing the gun at one of them and then taking him down with a blow. A noise can be heard from Miss Sang-Pi's room. Kyung-soo keeps walking toward it and finally opens the door. He comes face to face with the woman, who says she was wondering who was causing such a commotion. So it was him, as she had heard from Miss Phoenix. She was going to pay him a visit herself, but it seems he got here first. Kyung-soo asks if she received his gift card. After all, she was the first generation Phoenix. Sang-Pi asks who he is. The protagonist replies that he's heard that question a lot, but he's not tired of it and will make her remember the good old days. An Hyang keeps firing at the table. The projectiles pierce through the structure, and some even hit Dong Cheol. The woman orders them not to stop shooting, until she notices something different as Dong Cheol threw the table. The police officers get scared, and one of them raises his shield, redirecting the table away. An Hyang says that at this rate, he won't last much longer. Dong Cheol advances in a crouch toward the squad. Holding a blade in his hand, one of them raises his shield. That man acts from under the helmet and defeats the opponent. An Hyang is surprised to see this. Dong Cheol says he shouldn't have raised his shield without thinking, and that he thought he couldn't do anything because he was about to be defeated. The other soldiers scream, and Dong Cheol comments that he's close to her now. The girl is afraid of hitting her colleagues if she shoots and points the gun toward herself. An Hyang moves quickly to the side and shoves Dong Cheol away. The man is thrown back and she starts to aim. She fires repeatedly at Dong Cheol. He falls to the ground and An Hyang orders them to check his condition. The soldier says his colleague has been defeated, and the girl is surprised. Dong Cheol warns that the fight isn't over yet and throws a smoke device at them. The girl notices the device and it explodes a moment later. One of the soldiers says he can't see and is immediately hit, falling to the ground. Her friend asks what that was and where he was shooting from, while An Hyang thinks about what will happen if they keep screaming like that. Dong Cheol says it's pathetic to panic just because one of them was defeated. He adds that over time, equipment gets better, not people. They should think of this as a lesson for their juniors, even if the price of that lesson is their defeat as he lands another shot. One of the soldiers trembles in fear. He spots a silhouette in the smoke and starts shooting while screaming. But he notices something different. It was his colleague, who asks where he was shooting. Amidst the confusion of the smoke, An Hyang heard gunshots and her colleagues falling to the ground right after, wondering where he was shooting from and where she should shoot. wondering if she would be defeated, thinking that in that moment, Kim An-hyung feared for her safety. She looks at a figure in the smoke, wondering if it was friend or foe. Dong Cheol was holding the gun and she realizes it, but she gets scared seeing the man standing still, doing nothing more. She approaches, wondering if he was defeated, as the unpleasant feeling of defeat seemed to slowly fade away. Reality begins to become clearer, seeing all those who had fallen behind and around her. The girl panics, denying this fact. She was feeling despair and fear for the first time in her life, and Kim An-hyung could only let out frightened whimpers, until she hears a scream from afar and looks to the side. Jae-young-hee shouts that it's not working as Sang-muk runs after them. He complains that they were just running around like rats, and the girl shouts that this wasn't training, as nothing worked on him. Bai Kwang's training for his followers was straightforward. He taught them all about the human body's pressure points. With impact weapons, he taught them to aim for the solar plexus, the back of the head, and the joints. With a pointed weapon, he taught them to aim for the places with the greatest blood flow, saying that if they encounter an enemy during missions, depending on the weapon they have, they should aim for the spot he showed them. Most of them will definitely go down with a single blow to the right place, but it was clear there would be some exceptions, as they pointed their batons at Sang-muk's neck. Batman comments that it doesn't even tickle him. Back in the present, they continue to scream and run. Jae-young-hee calls for the leader's help until she steps on someone on the ground. She asks what this is and what had happened. Sung-hyun feels sick, and the girl asks what happened as he points. The officers were all down on the floor, and An-hyung stared ahead in despair. Jae-young-hee asks if this was real, and Sang-muk is surprised, saying that Dong Cheol did well this time and did a good job with containment, until he notices his friend sitting with the gun in his hand not moving. He gets scared and calls his name once more. In another room, Kyung-soo calls out to the former Phoenix and asks where the current one is. Sang-pi questions who he is, and the protagonist tells her to guess, because when it comes to things like this, she isn't naive and should already know. She replies that she's not sure. Her guess is that he's an interesting person saying interesting things, and under other circumstances, she would have served him tea. Taking a patch from her shirt, Kyung-soo lurches forward with his fist. He says that this is the specialty of stimulant users like her, then throws the girl far away, because she was going to try to talk while secretly applying a strengthening patch. The girl gets up, holding the patch. Kyung-soo rushes forward again with a kick, saying he would have just attacked during the time she wasted putting on that patch, and hits her arm. She feels the strong impact of the blow and moves a pill in her mouth. But Kyung-soo's hand approaches and he covers her mouth, saying that this is also very obvious. It must be unpleasant to keep a pill in your mouth all day, so he removes it. Sang-pi moves her legs and tries to immobilize him. Kyung-soo comments that such an attempt from someone who depends on substances, but without their help, was the very definition of useless. He then slams her onto the table. The girl groans a little, and Kyung-soo tells her to give him the Phoenix's location, because there's no good in protecting a coward like her, who hides while her subordinates are fighting. Sang-pi says she's not a coward, and the protagonist agrees, because in this case, she's just someone dependent on substances. If she doesn't tell him the location, the worst will happen, but his words are cut off by papers hitting his back. He turns around, surprised. A few children were looking at him angrily. A girl shouts that he's a bad guy, and the protagonist is surprised. Sang-pi says the children are late this time, because she told them to come as soon as they heard such a loud noise. One of the youths charges with a blade, telling him to stay away from Miss P, but the protagonist just dodges. He neutralizes the youth with a quick blow to immobilize him. The other two boys run with the same speed, but the protagonist repeats his action once more, and the children fall to the ground. Sang-pi asks what he's going to do, because now she has already used the stimulant. Kyung-soo asks if she gave them permission to get the children involved. Sang-pi asks who knows. The protagonist replies that it's not going to work, kicking the blade that was on the floor and then catching it. Then he warns that she will have to be stopped now that she's made him angry. In the past, in a remote place, Sang-pi was watching something. Bai Kwang was facing someone. Ruda approaches and asks what she thinks. This child would be the new Bai Kwang. The Phoenix says she doesn't know, because he seems stronger than the first generation Bai Kwang, but it seems he's unable to finish the fight. This is the same ambiguous Bai Kwang, and Buddha replies that she's wrong because with her perception altered by substances, she wouldn't be able to see it. He can easily finish the fight. He was just choosing not to. Sang-pi asks if he's toying with someone classified as a month, and Buddha says that when that boy first came here, all the children had been defeated by the first generation Bai Kwang except him. Then he tells her to look again so she can feel it, the countless openings that boy created. It was beautiful like the leaves of a willow tree, wondering who else would be more suitable for the role of Bai Kwang than that boy. In the present, Sang-pi is struck by the blade several times and thinks so this is it. She understands now. This man was definitely Bai Kwang, moving with the speed and precision of willow leaves in the wind. After the battle, Sang-pi is on the ground almost defeated. The protagonist approaches her, saying he'll ask one last time where the Phoenix is hiding, and Sang-pi asks if he'll neutralize her even if she tells him. The protagonist confirms but says he would do it quickly, and the girl cracks a smile. The first generation Phoenix, now known as Sang-pi after leaving the position of the month November, had her fate left in the hands of the new Phoenix by Buddha. When the old months are replaced by the new ones, a succession ceremony must be held, which is completed with the farewell of the old generation. However, the new Phoenix did not defeat the old one. Instead, she asks why she tried to use that against her, wondering if she knows how much poison she's consumed so far, and if she really thought she wouldn't notice, because even after letting her live, she still tried to take her life. Then she asks if she doesn't like her, and Sang-pi says that would never happen. Phoenix just questions why everyone hates her so much and starts crying. Because they already tried to take her life for being weak, so she fought back and became one of the months, but now everyone hates her for using drugs. She, of all people, shouldn't feel hatred because she went through the same things. Then she stands up, saying they're going to do it. If she drinks this, Sang-P has to like her. So she drinks it in front of the woman and asks how about it. With her eyes and mouth bleeding, she announces that she drank it all, and that she did well this time because from now on she will like her. Asking for just one answer while Sang-P, who had lived selfishly to survive, saw Phoenix cry in her arms for the first time in her life. She felt the feeling of love, so she asks how she can risk sending the first person she ever loved to hell. Bai Kwang keeps stepping on her and says that if that's her final answer, then she should go to hell. He then makes the final cut on her. The protagonist walks away, saying he'll have to ask the other bastards. In her last words, Sang-P says that Miss Phoenix will come back here. Besides, the kids are all your responsibility, so please don't take Phoenix's life. That was his last wish for Bai Kwang. The protagonist thinks for a moment. Outside, Phoenix was riding a motorcycle toward the location. Bai Kwang says that will depend on what that damn woman does. Sang-Muk shouts for Dong Cheol and Jeong-hee to help the captain. The man runs to his friend, and the girl tells the captain to pull herself together. She slaps her face repeatedly, but with no success. She then asks the two to try slapping her, but Heejin calls out to Jeong-hee. Sang-Muk was using patches filled with rage after losing his friend. He charges toward them as the girl yells to block him. Sang-Muk swings his arm and throws them both away with an elbow strike. Then he goes after the girl, saying he's going to rip out every single one of her organs. His hand gets closer, but blood splatters from nearby. It came from Sang-Muk, who had been cut by Kyung-Soo. The giant man groans in pain, and Jeong-hee calls out to her friend. Kyung-Soo says he won't let him tear his colleagues apart, not on his watch. This girl's body is still useful for something. He then looks at Dong Cheol, saying he hit his pressure point, but they were still defeated. He had underestimated Dong Cheol's abilities. Then Sang-Muk moves up behind him. The protagonist blocks the blow with a shield and says that must have hurt. Sang-Muk complains about the pain in his hand, and the protagonist calls out to the other three. He tells them to take care of the kids who are passed out on the floor, because he's going to end this quickly, grabbing his gun. Sang-Muk uses two bodies as shields and tells him to shoot. The protagonist simply accepts the order and fires. The bullet passes between the two bodies and hits Sang-Muk directly in the shoulder. He groans in pain and lets them go as Kyung-Soo approaches and says he won't take his life. They were all in hell, and he had to keep at least him alive. Sang-Muk is surprised and asks what that was all about. He then charges, calling him a bastard. The protagonist shoots the man in the legs. He tells the three to report to base that they're heading back, and they acknowledge the order. Kyung-Soo thinks to himself that he thought it would be easy, but he was wrong and misjudged the situation. He had high expectations for them, but still, he had very high hopes for the girl who was now completely broken. Jaeong-hee asks the protagonist to tie him up. Kyung-Soo thinks she's a deity compared to the others, and he must have overestimated her abilities. He tells the three of them they should just give up. Then he notices something to his side. Phoenix bursts into the place on her motorcycle. She aims her vehicle to hit the spot where the protagonist is standing. Kyung-Soo readies his rifle and fires at her, but Phoenix dodges, hitting his shield with her rear tire. The protagonist is thrown back by the impact. Then the girl parks her bike. Sang-Muk calls out to his lady as she takes off her helmet. Phoenix had a different patch on her head, and Heejin recognizes her as the crazy girl from the other day. The woman tells Choi Sang-Muk to gather the others and follow, as finding an escape route was harder than she expected. She says if she's going to get chewed out, she'd rather they stay alive. Sang-Muk informs her that everyone else is already dead except for him. The girl is shocked to hear this, and the protagonist confirms it. He says they were all lifeless, remembering Dong Cheol, and Sang-P. Phoenix gets angry and revs her motorcycle while pulling something from her jacket. She twirls her throwing stars between her fingers, saying she'll take the protagonist's life herself. Kyung-Soo feigns surprise and says that's terrifying. In the past, Bai Kwang was resting with an injured arm when someone called out to him. Phoenix approaches and says it looks like he got chewed out for disobeying Lord Buddha, and asks if he's okay. Bai Kwang asks about her, and the girl says she's fine because it's her own fault for being so weak. Lord Buddha said he'll be in charge of evaluating them starting next month, and she's relieved to have him in command now. She was so envious because he was promoted to be one of the months and even got a name. Besides, Bai Kwang sounds cool. She asks if he thinks she can get a name too, and Bai Kwang replies that her dreams are too big. Phoenix says the relationship between the months is awful, and if she manages to become one, Bai Kwang still has to be friendly with her. He must promise her that. Back in the present, Phoenix throws the flowers at the protagonist. One of them hits his glove and explodes on impact. Kyung-Soo thinks it's a narcotic smoke. It's not particularly explosive, but it's significantly blocking his vision. His arm is still a bit stiff, but he can move it. Then, Phoenix charges forward on her bike. The protagonist dodges by moving to the side, and the girl stops her bike. She asks how long he's going to keep running. Then she notices something different. The protagonist has jumped toward the stairs. She says he must think she can't follow him up the stairs and rides her bike right up them. A room on the second floor was open, and the protagonist runs through it. The smoke follows him, and Phoenix's motorcycle comes right after. She notices something. All her subordinates are on the ground. Kyung-Soo tells her to come at him, but to be careful not to run over her own people. Phoenix dodges all the bodies with her bike, showing absurd skill. She realizes something. The protagonist is no longer there. Kyung-Soo comments that she's really good at riding that thing. He's holding onto the railings on the ceiling. He moves quickly, wrapping his arms around her neck in a chokehold. Phoenix decides to accelerate her bike, and the protagonist remarks that she's trying to throw him off, but she's not wearing a helmet to do it. The bike goes one way, and the two of them are thrown in the other. He clutches his lower back, commenting that it's the second time he's fallen today. Phoenix gets up, asking who the hell he is. If it weren't for him, everything would have gone according to her plan. Kyung-Soo says he's not sure when it started, but at some point, she started blaming him for everything. She used to follow him around and do whatever he said when she was younger. The person she should be blaming isn't him. The girl screams at him not to talk about things he doesn't understand. She demands to know who the hell he is, and the protagonist answers, Bai Kwang. That was his name. name. The girl asks what he means. What the hell is he talking about? The protagonist calls out to Phoenix. He tells her to surrender as he had planned to take her life. She's in charge of the funds, so she might have transaction data left behind. They ask for her to be brought in alive. She must testify against all the crap she went through because of that bastard monk and provide all related evidence. In return, he would let her live. Phoenix laughs hysterically, saying Bai Kwang had a secret disciple who was a cop. Kyung-soo says that she, of all people, knows he doesn't have any disciples because she investigated him when she became one of the months. Or did she think he wouldn't notice someone following him during missions? There were only 2 people in Hwagsa who didn't like that monk, the 2 of them. So he asks why she didn't leave. The girl screams at him repeatedly to shut up because Bai Kwang was motionless. Lord Buddha even approached her and said she would be next if she didn't obey. Kyung-soo says it might be hard to believe. The girl cries as she says Bai Kwang didn't say that to his disciple, remembering the past. She dislikes Bai Kwang more than Lord Buddha, and so she places 2 more special patches on her face. Phoenix charges at him, and the protagonist holds his ground. The girl opens her hands, and the protagonist strikes her in the abdomen, where the Paulownia flowers were. The smoke fills the area, and the protagonist is surprised. The girl says this feels great and thinks it's amazing. Those substances were the best things in her life. Even if she gets a headache later, a little stomach discomfort, or even gets hurt, the substances could take care of anything. Even when she's in the worst situations or doesn't feel well, these substances take care of everything. Then, Phoenix lands a punch on the protagonist's face. That situation was so good, she repeats it in her mind. If she uses the substances as medicine, she'll get better and recover. However, such compounds only make you delusional about what's happening in the real world. The girl asks how he's still standing, but the reality remains the same. They only make things worse, with Phoenix panicking from the pain. She wonders what that was because she was winning and needs more. The protagonist calls out to Phoenix, telling her it's a pitiful situation and she should just give up. The girl thinks about his words. She gets up with the patches, asking who he thinks he is. Kyung-soo replies that he knows everything very well, better than anyone, as he tosses the patches into the air. The girl screams for her substances and tries to catch them midair. The protagonist tells her to give up now and surrender, neutralizing her with a single blow, because she needs to stop exposing her weakness. After a while, she asks him for the substances. Kyung-soo says if she promises to surrender, he'll give her a portion. Phoenix tells him to just defeat her, as she's more afraid of facing Buddha's wrath than being beaten. Kyung-soo replies that Sang-pi asked for a favor. She begged him not to defeat her. Phoenix retorts that if he were really Bai Kwang, he wouldn't have neutralized Sang-pi, but would have taken her information instead. The protagonist explains that she got involved with the children, and judging by the girl's reaction, she didn't know about it. He asks if she understands why he stopped her, but Phoenix just says he's still pretending to be Bai Kwang. Kyung-soo gets up, saying that if this is because she's afraid of that monk, she shouldn't worry, because he's going to stop that opponent once and for all. She is surprised and repeats, "You're going to face Master Buddha," laughing at the idea. She then comments that he even managed to defeat Bai Kwang and that he'll never be able to do this. Kyung-soo explains that his original body was damaged and weakened. From years of excessive training and hardship as a child, it was a shortcut to becoming stronger, but his body is a consumable item and the damage accumulates. And the final mission sealed the fate of how his body weakened. It was the sweet mission of the true religion. He was gravely injured after that mission, and she knows it, but this new body he's acquired is different. It was trained diligently, allowing him to spring into action in the blink of an eye without any difficulty. This body was brand new. He was lucky because if he had taken that other person's body instead, he feels uneasy just thinking about it. He then says that if he gets used to this body and trains more, that monk will be defeated by him. Phoenix is startled. She says he really is the Bai Kwang she once knew. The protagonist confirms it and tells her to choose, surrender or be defeated right here. The girl thinks for a few seconds and makes her decision. Outside, Heejin asks if Kyung-soo will be okay. Jae-young-hee says she'll gather everyone and get out of there, as reinforcements will arrive in 30 minutes. But they should give first aid to Sang-muk before that, since he's seriously injured. The man says that if they try to touch him, he'll take them all down. Jae-young-hee replies that she'll just use her finger then. The man gets scared and asks her to take the patches from his pocket and put them all on him. The girl asks what kind of nonsense this is. Sang-muk writhes in agony, telling her to hurry up and do it. Jae-young-hee replies that these are dangerous compounds and he's under their influence, so it makes no sense to feed his addiction. A voice from afar says that's right. The figures at the door stand waiting. April comments that these substances are for the weak, and his brother July finishes. Sang-muk is startled, and the girl asks who they are. April keeps repeating the man's name. He asks what happened to him to be in this state. He used to be huge like a tree trunk, but now he's nothing but dry branches. They send him to try and stop that woman, and Sang-muk trembles in fear. Phoenix sums it up. He's the one who supports the Black Lesbadiza. She asks if he was there to stop her. The man is surprised by this. The girl says she has something far more interesting than defeating her. She asks if he wants to do it with her, showing the substances. April concludes that getting interested in a woman like her left him in this deplorable state. He warned him several times about girls, but he didn't listen. Meanwhile, July calls out to his brother, saying there's nothing wrong with women, it's just that woman under the influence. April then complains that his Hyun was saying there's nothing wrong with them. Some are weak and can't even train their arms, and July replies that they're on another level when it comes to training legs. Sang-muk asks what brings the Lesbadiza brothers here, and April replies it's an obvious question. They were there to stop that woman and ask where she is. On the way from that place, the protagonist carries Phoenix on his back. She comments that this reminds her of the old days. Bai Kwang tells her to stop talking and save her energy for surrendering, asking if she remembers when they first met met when Buddha called Bai Kwang, who was working, saying this is the child who passed through the entrance. From now on, the two of them will be in a unit, and he must teach her a few things while she practices. A few moments later, the girl falls to the ground with her sword. Bai Kwang had easily knocked her down. He asks how she passed the first rite of passage if she's this weak. The girl talks about bodies, because she woke up trapped among them and was the only one alive. Bai Kwang replies that she's not skilled enough to pass. The girl apologizes, saying she'll do whatever he commands, but pleads with him not to tell Master Buddha. Bai Kwang remains silent, watching the girl plead. He then tells her to get up, saying he won't tell anyone, because when he passed through the entrance, he promised himself he would keep his future partner alive and safe. The girl asks if he can promise and holds out her pinky. Bai Kwang asks what that is. She replies that promises are made by linking this finger, that's what her mother told her. She asks if he can promise, and the protagonist accepts. Buddha had reached out to the girl in later events. Afterward, the agents forced her to consume those substances. She comments that she knew it was a promise he couldn't keep and wonders how he could survive in that environment while protecting her. Therefore, she should have blamed the one responsible, but instead, she just started blaming him more and more. The protagonist replies that she got it all wrong. He never broke his promise to keep her alive. He wants to know if she still doesn't know why she was the only one who survived that day. Phoenix asks what he means by that. Outside, April squeezes Sangmuk's arm, complaining that he's gotten thin, and it's a real shame. Jaeyoung-gi shouts for her friends to stop him. They grab the shields from the floor and charge forward, yelling. But they are startled when they see July move his legs for a kick. Just by hitting the shield, he dents it and sends it flying. He then tells them to stay put as they're getting rid of the traitor. April says he liked him so much. Sangmuk pulls a patch from his pocket and tries to use it on himself. Lespediza asks if he's resorting to that substance in his final moments, and if he'll ever stop disappointing them, but tells him to go ahead, because they'll see where the path he chose will lead. Sangmuk uses the patch and says he's afraid of disappointing them. It was just Miss Phoenix. He then moves his fist towards April, but he's immediately hit by April's elbow and thrown back by the impact. He comments that the road he chose to follow will lead him to a bad end. Then he wants to know whose turn it is now, until the brothers notice something and get excited, because now that they've taken a second look, they see some interesting opponents there, a smile forming under their masks. The four of them are surprised by this, and Ji-young asks about being interesting, but April says it wasn't about her. He doesn't fight women for that very reason. Men, on the other hand, have an imposing physique and are more challenging opponents. He points to Heejun as he was his chosen one. He then asks what sports he plays, and the young man replies that he's been boxing for about 10 years. The girl gets annoyed, saying it was foolish to answer. April claps his hands, saying that was excellent. He had a strong body, and he really liked that. He then points to Sunghyun, and Ji-young tells him not to answer. She asks why they're talking to these dangerous individuals. April tells the woman to stay out of it. Suddenly, July says to wait a second. That woman was incredible the closer he looked, saying that An Hyung has a very well-trained physique. He moves towards her. He grabs her by the neck while Ji-young attacks him, telling him to let the girl go. April was pinning down Heejun, who was stunned by his strength. July says they should be grateful for the coming fight. Back in the hallway, Phoenix asks what he means about her being the only one to survive that day. It was probably because she has immunity to that substance, and Kyung-soo replies that after becoming her training partner, he realized one thing. Because no matter how much she trained, in the end, she would inevitably be defeated by that opponent. He sighs deeply, and Bai Kwang asks if he was worried about that little girl. He snaps the staff in two and lunges at him. Bai Kwang easily stops him, telling him to calm down. He says that even as the next month, he's still just a child, and strikes him on the neck. Then he says he would tell him a way to prevent her from being defeated. He knows what kind of herbs are used to make the compound. If she is exposed to small amounts now, and the dose is gradually increased, she will become immune. He asks what he wants with this. Bai Kwang replies that he is an intelligent child, and it was a wise decision on his part to let him live that day. And so he was able to get his hands on the list of herbs used in exchange for a deal with the first generation Bai Kwang. A few days later, he offers a bowl of food to the girl. She cheers, excited to eat the porridge, but she notices a strange taste and says it was a bit bitter. From then on, he secretly started putting the compound in her food, and after a few years, she was able to survive. They were able to meet again this way. Phoenix says it was a lie, but Bai Kwang asks if she remembers having a fever and rashes all over her body. She questions why he didn't tell her before, and he explains that they both would have been in danger if she had said something while under the effect. And that opponent thought she was born with a natural resistance, like Sang-pi, so he forced her into dependency. He had prepared to escape in secret without Hwadux's knowledge. He went to find her, intending to take her with him. Then he calls Phoenix and tells her to wake up because they have to go before they're discovered, but she tells him to go to the place where it's paradise. Bai Kwang thinks to himself that he's made a fatal error in judgment. Phoenix asks if he will take her out. She says she has to stay and do something better. He thinks to himself that those harmful substances are the worst things in the world, and they've changed her. He came to regret the choices he made as he watched her change more and more, and wonders if he should have just let her be defeated that time. Phoenix asks why he didn't run away alone. He answers that he doesn't know. Then they hear a scream in the distance. He wonders who was screaming, and Phoenix says Sangmuk might be the cause. She says she needs to hurry and tell him. So they go through the door and she tells Sangmuk to stop. But the screams don't stop. April had defeated Heejun. Jaeyoung calls Kyung-soo's name. Phoenix recognizes the brothers, and he says this isn't good. There were two brothers where the older was born with a weaker lower body and the younger with a weaker upper body. Their physical weaknesses were a trauma in themselves, and that was the reason they were abandoned. They were confined to the hunger room where children with physical difficulties were sent. The brothers couldn't accept that they would have a bad fate just because they were born with a disability. And because of that, they promised to overcome their reality. They trained, overcame their opponents, and grew stronger, repeating this process hundreds of times until they slowly became stronger. A few months later, Buddha opens the door to the hunger room. The brothers were able to stay alive through training. The older one was able to train his lower body and gained legs as sturdy as a wild boar's, and the younger one could train his upper body and developed shoulders as broad as a bird's. This is incredible. incredible because they were two lesbidezas. The two brothers became April and July. They asked what that person affected by the substance was doing there, being carried on a police officer's back. Phoenix notices something, seeing Sangmuk's body on the floor. She screams for her subordinate. April yells that he has waited a long time for this day and greatly despises people who walk around acting strong just because they are one of the months, acting like there's something special even with a weak body. And now, without Bai Kwang, if she has defeated the January Crane, the March Cherry Blossom, and the August Eulalia Mountain will fall. Only they will remain. July says they should spare the Cherry Blossom because she's beautiful, and the protagonist thinks that 1 month alone is a headache, but it had to be the two of them who stick together. He asks if Ji On should happen, and she replies that they'll be there in 10 minutes. Kyung-soo takes Phoenix off his back, saying that it's not much time. He can hold those men off for 10 minutes, but his vision blurs for a second. He wonders what the hell is happening to his body. Looking at his body, he notices the veins altered by the substance. The compound spread through his body from contact with Phoenix and caused this reaction. She started complaining, saying she wouldn't go anywhere if he didn't carry her on his back. She had gone soft. This wasn't good, and April leaps towards him. He tries to grab him, but is surprised because he had vanished before being hit. Kyung-soo ducks and tries a leg sweep, hitting April's shin. The man doesn't feel the effect and comments that he wouldn't be able to knock him down with such a weak blow, so he tries to attack with his fists, but he complains upon realizing he had escaped once again. He comments that April seems to have gotten bigger but also slower. April is surprised, asking if he knows him from somewhere. Kang thinks that he's losing his strength. Then he yells for Phoenix to follow the other officers and get out of here, saying he'll be right behind them, also telling Jo Kyung-hee to take the children and the other team members and leave. July says to get out of here now and blocks the entrance. He thinks he doesn't have much time, so he runs, thinking he needs to finish this quickly. April readies a punch, saying he likes this. He dodges, dropping low, and prepares to strike his stomach, but April changes his attack to an elbow strike, and he dodges again. Phoenix thinks that he was matching Bai Kwang. She had always been a burden to him, and she grits her teeth at the thought, but she pulls something from her jacket, saying that this is the end. April comments that he's getting slower, but he has a good physique. It's a shame. Since you're contaminated, I won't devour you. So say goodbye to your life, he says, moving his fist. However, a noise is heard in the room. April is surprised by Phoenix stopping his attack. She apologizes to her appa, because she probably won't be able to turn around and confess. April tells this woman to get out of his way, while Phoenix says that this time, she will be the one to save him. There are several stages to the Phoenix drugs. The tiers created by the previous Phoenix P and Sang P, with the updated version being Guang. The amount of satisfaction and physical enhancement one received depended on the version of the stage. But of course, risks could occur after the effects wore off. The most potent version of them all was Guang, strong enough to make the Sang P version obsolete in just one variation. But there was a stage above Guang that not even the higher-ups knew about. Phoenix, who noticed her body was building a resistance to the Guang stages, dedicated her time and effort to refining it into a concentrated form. The product of her efforts was named Phoenix Tears. She decided she would drink it when the Guang versions no longer had an effect on her, or when a more important moment in her life arose. And Phoenix was sure of one thing. If she drank the Phoenix Tears stored in a tempered glass vial, the next place she would wake up would be hell. She grabs April's fist. He is surprised and tells the girl to get her filthy hands off him, then throws his other fist. But the girl strikes his back, making April cry out in pain. He retreats, cursing that damned woman, until he feels something different. His hand was feeling the effects of the drugs. April screams that this crazy woman had used it on him. His clean body had been contaminated by it. Phoenix starts whispering something to her appa. April asks what they were talking about and how she dares to taint his clean body. The girl says that just as she thought, he's a junkie too, since the drugs have no effect on him. April tells her to take back what she said, claiming he was fine because of his strong willpower. He says he's all natural and lunges forward, punching her in the abdomen. Then he declares he's going to defeat her. Phoenix moves some of her blood and spits it out. It hits April's face, temporarily blinding him. She moves in stealthily as April calls her a damn bitch. The girl grabs his arm and holds him down using her legs and arm. April calls her a damn junkie, and Phoenix yells at the police officers. She tells them to grab their colleagues and get the hell out of there. Sangyeon asks why this person is suddenly helping them, and Jeong-hee replies that it's not important right now. They need to get Kyung-soo, the captain, and the children out of there, but Jolho tells them to stop. He says that no one is going anywhere. They tremble in fear, but Jeong-hee notices something. She steps on the patches and gets an idea. April screams for her to get off him and starts struggling on the ground. Jolho asks if his brother needs help, and April tells him to get her off him. His brother approaches but says he'll take the cops' lives first. He's then surprised to see Jeong-hee has used a patch on her own face, commenting that it feels good. She asks about the cop who uses illegal substances, but she had lost her mind. Then the girl rushes forward and sticks the patch on Jolho's thigh. He is shocked and asks what it is. He panics when he sees it stuck to his thigh. He complains that it's disgusting and they need to get it off, while Jeong-hee tells Lee Seong-hyun to grab Kyung-soo and Heejun to get the kids. They both manage to grab their charges. Then they decide to retreat, running from the scene. Seong-hyun tells the protagonist to hang in there as medics will arrive soon. The protagonist feels himself losing consciousness and looks back. Phoenix was keeping April in an armbar. She says goodbye to her appa. Jolho yells for his little bro to help get this shit off him, and April yells for the idiot to get it off himself. April keeps squirming until he breaks free a little. He lands a punch on Phoenix's face, calling her a bitch. He strikes her again in anger. Then he gets up. Jolho says he's going to find that red-haired cop and kill her now. But Phoenix's bombs are thrown, and she asks where they think they're going. The grenade hits the ground, and she says the three of them are going to fight. They have unfinished business, and they're going to settle it once and for all. This is the end, so they're all going to die together. One rainy night, Bai Kwang came to her. He tells her he took a man's life for the first time, and the girl says she heard about it, and that he had become one of the months. The protagonist notes that it seemed like he had lost something. He asks if she's ever taken a life, and the girl says no. Bai Kwang begs her not to change and holds out his pinky finger. The girl accepts it as a promise. From that day on, on, Bai Kwang, now one of the months, successfully took on missions to eliminate killers like himself, but he failed missions that involved taking civilian lives and suffered at the hands of Lord Buddha. However, he was too skilled for Buddha to take his life. On the other hand, Phoenix became a month who turned countless people into addicts, dragging them into an endless den of despair. She felt no remorse for breaking the promise she made to her appa, nor did she think he had failed to keep his. But she was wrong about that. She had drugged and killed people in front of Bai Kwang and she hated him. But she was wrong about that. April punches the girl in the stomach and Jolho grabs her head for a knee strike. She wonders why she had changed so much. But she remembers Kyung-soo saying that drugs were the reason she changed. If reincarnation exists, it is said that if you sinned in your past life, you will be reborn as an insect or livestock to atone for your sins before returning as a human. Bai Kwang held on to the smallest shred of his humanity and was reincarnated as a human to ultimately correct his sins. So in her next life, she wonders if she'll be an insect or livestock, or if she would be born into that hell once more. She lies on the ground in front of the two brothers. April wonders if the drugs are wearing off since she doesn't look well, and Jolo says they beat her too much. The girl repeats the word drugs and asks them for some. The two start laughing because she was begging for it even before dying, and it was truly disgusting. He asks if she'd like another hit before going to hell and picks up the patch from the ground. April tells her to take back what she said about them being junkies, and then, as a gift, he'll put one on her. Now she should talk. Phoenix asks if he's really going to give her drugs. She reaches out crying, but then she remembers the promise. When Bai Kwang cried and asked her not to change. When she dies, she will go sober, saying that the two brothers are just like her. Before she dies, she will apologize to the people she ruined, as April squeezes her hard and hits her, saying she was all natural. From the bottom of her heart, she will repent, even if she can't be reincarnated like Bai Kwang. The girl says she's so sorry and that she was wrong. Insect or livestock, she doesn't care. She doesn't need to be reborn as a human. She doesn't even need to be reborn at all, so please. Never let her be born in that place again, she cries. April asks what the hell she's talking about while crying, and then he takes the girl's life. He looks down at his veiny hands. He comments that his whole body is tainted now, but they have to go as they have unfinished business. Jolo asks if he plans to chase the cops in his state since their backup is on the way. April asks who said he cares, as he'll just kill them all. Jolo replies that he's a little scared. They start arguing. They still have business with the orange-haired woman, but on the other hand, they don't know how many backup units are coming. April tells him to forget it. If he won't go with him, he'll go alone. Jolo says he has no choice but to follow. But suddenly, over the comms, Orchid calls for the Lespediza brothers, asking if they dealt with Phoenix. April confirms they did and were about to leave. Orchid tells them backup is on its way to their location and is climbing the mountain as they speak. At the club warehouse, they must destroy the evidence and the site before escaping through the back, following Buddha's orders. The two grab the items and prepare them. They stage the scene around Phoenix, making a disrespectful comment about her farewell. April expresses his contempt for Phoenix, and Jolo makes his sarcastic remark on the matter. The brothers set the place on fire, commenting that they need to hurry, so they don't get caught in the flames. So this is the final farewell to Phoenix before the end. At the hospital, Kyung-soo wakes up suddenly, startled. He looks out the window, his head aching from the recent events. A small bird was resting on the tree beside him. The Phoenix's Paulownia operation was complete. At the Buddha's temple, Buddha holds the November card in his hand. He crushes it moments later. He calls for May's Orchid, who was on a listening device. From January to October, he must gather everyone, for the ceremony will begin now. At the hospital, Jaeyoung-yi is visibly distraught, speaking incoherently. Kyung-soo watches her from a distance, thinking she seems unhinged. Behind him, Han-jun calls out to veteran Kyung-soo. He asks if he's okay and if they can talk for a bit. In a waiting room, he asks how long he was out, and Han replies it was 2 days. Phoenix had been defeated. Kyung-soo says he understands and that he should have saved her to extract information. But she was defeated, and he looked sad. Han-jun mentions that while he was out, opinions arose that the police's use of lethal force in the Phoenix's Paulownia operation was excessive. On the other hand, some politicians are arguing against that, saying it was the right call to make. A split in public opinion has started because of this. Kyung-soo asks if they're saying that even about the soldiers who were defeated, and Han-jun says that politicians always split into two sides. If Party A has a circle, then Party B has a triangle. And vice versa, if Part B has a circle, there are many cases where Part A will have a triangle. Kyung-soo said it was a complicated situation, and Han-jun says that in the end, Superintendent Kim Ae-young, who was involved, along with officers Hwang Hee-jun and Lee Seon-hyun, said they want to quit the force. The protagonist asks about it in disbelief, and Han-jun says he brought them back. Kyung-soo comments that they're causing trouble, and she replies that this was a summary of the key points. First, you need to go somewhere with me, and we'll talk about the rest later. Kyung asks where. Han-jun explains it's the farewell ceremony for the fallen Special Forces soldiers. Kyung-soo says he's never been to a funeral, and the man tells him to put on his uniform. But the protagonist asks him to wait, saying he needs to go somewhere first and will be back quickly. At Hwaguksa Temple, a meeting is held by the Buddha statue. The months of the organization were gathered there. The January crane did not attend the meeting. The February plum birds comment that the crane didn't show up again. Cherry Blossom comments that he must think they aren't busy, but she has a full schedule of things to catch up on and still came. April's Black Lespediza asks why she's pretending to be busy when she's not even married. May Orchid says he should hold back and asks if he wants her to help him. June Peony replies that it's alright, and that her dogs aren't aggressive. July Lespediza wonders if he should ask Cherry Blossom out on a date after the ceremony. August Eulalia Mountain did not attend the meeting. September Chrysanthemum asks when Buddha will arrive. October Maple Leaf comments that it seems the Phoenix has been defeated. Suddenly, the doors open and Buddha enters. He asks if everyone is gathered. October comments that the crane in the mountain didn't come, and Buddha replies that the mountain is cleaning up the Phoenix's remains. February asks about January, and Buddha says he's out of the question. April comments it's because they are Kwangs, and Cherry Blossom says she's won too and still showed up. Buddha asks if everyone heard that the Phoenix was defeated, and February says she did something significant significant before her end. Cherry Blossom asks if they are there to choose the new November and December, but Buddha says no. The reason he called them is because one of them will neutralize the veteran Senior Superintendent General Hong Jun. They question the order, asking about a police officer. Chrysanthemum says that for this kind of request, he could send one of the disciples instead of one of the months. Orchid agrees since they are no longer the same organization as in the past, and Buddha says that long ago, he sent Bai Kwang to stop Hong Jun. Chrysanthemum says Bai Kwang wouldn't confront someone unless they were a dangerous adversary, and July comments that he wasn't qualified for the task. Buddha adds that this time was different, as he returned badly injured. He says this police officer is incredibly skilled. Peony wonders how he could be so strong, and July comments that he didn't look impressive in the photo. April says Bai Kwang must not have tried his best, but Orchid states that he was quite injured. Buddha can't believe it either, so it's better to be cautious. Instead of neutralizing him, he made sure he could no longer track them. However, this man is tracking them again, and now they know he's skilled. So he asks who will stop this man. At the funeral ceremony, Hong Jun feels a slight chill. The protagonist climbs a mountain in his training clothes. He thinks about how he was losing consciousness that day, but the Phoenix's last words to him were the coordinates of a specific location. According to the coordinates, this was the place. He wonders what could be there, and if it's buried in the ground again, imagining the place would be full of insects. Digging in this place will take a long time, but a bird catches his attention. He turns towards that rock, and the little bird makes a move. At Waguksa Temple, Orchid finds Buddha in his room. She says it might be unwise to confront a police executive who has been under such public scrutiny after the incident. Buddha replies that it will be fine, and in fact, it's even better. The public's reaction is intense and volatile, so it would be better for the event to happen all at once so they can forget about it altogether.